Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel on this Memorial Day. Before we get into the show, just want to say my deepest thank you to all of you on this Memorial Day who have served our country. Much appreciated. We have a lot of listeners, people in the audience that have connections either through family or are in the military currently. So shout out to all of you. Can't thank you enough for your service. And what better way to celebrate America than than football and talking football in May, right? Yes. So the Minnesota Vikings spring program is about to begin, and I'll tell you guys how this works, and then we'll dive into the biggest storylines, which, yes, are highlighted by the quarterback position. So I'll just tell you that we get one day each of OTAs, and then we usually see all of the minicamp. So the next 2 weeks, there will be OTAs. We'll be out there on Wednesday, and then one day next week. And then usually it's 3 minicamp practices. And then sometimes there's an additional OTA, which is oftentimes not exactly mandatory. And you'll usually have younger players showing up, but it's not often the veterans. We'll just have to see how that goes. So in total, the media, including myself, will be out there for about 4 or 5 practices. So I just want to give all disclaimers to understand that we are not going to resolve every one of these storylines in the next 4 to 5 open practices. I promise you we're not. And Kevin O'Connell generally, historically, has not treated these practices with a ton of intensity, meaning he wants to keep everybody healthy and make sure that nobody is coming off of a minicamp injury when they're trying to get ready for training camp and trying to get their bodies to 100% to start the very long haul. So those are your disclaimers. But of course, since we'll be there, Dane Mizutani from the Pioneer Press and I will have podcasts right after from TCO Performance Center, breaking down what we saw, what we learned. And usually the best part, to tell you the truth, is that we get to hear from everybody. We get to hear from Kevin O'Connell. We will likely hear from the quarterbacks at some point and a lot of other players as well, and we can learn a lot from the spring program, but it's not as intense as training camp, and we won't have the answers to everything by the end of the spring and into the summer. And as you guys have learned, we don't always even have all the answers until they actually get on the field for week 1 and start playing football. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean we can't break down all the storylines and all the things that I will be looking for out there. And in comment section, interested in what you guys would like to know about or hear about from TCO Performance Center as we get into this interesting portion of the offseason where sometimes things do develop. So I don't want to say, oh, there's nothing going on. I've always viewed it as it sets the stage for training camp is what OTAs and minicamp really do. So let's get into the storylines where we begin, of course, with the quarterback competition. That's how I'd like to say it. I've been calling it the quarterback situation, which I think is more applicable than quarterback competition, but I think it's also, if you want to say it with a question mark, quarterback competition. That's an okay way to put it. But what can we really learn from the quarterback situation or competition over the next couple of weeks of these spring practices? Well, we could see the distribution of reps, but that could be a little bit on the tricky side because they usually have a lot of different wide receivers rotating. The last thing that you want to do is to say, Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, why don't you go run 100,000 routes in this spring practice as hard as you possibly can, right? So you want to keep it limited. I mean, this is a real marathon, especially with 17 games, and the Vikings are supposed to be in the playoffs. And, so you're talking about many months of football. You do not want to start putting wear and tear on anybody's body in June, right? But still, you want to start getting something going in terms of chemistry, and you want the quarterbacks to also get involved with a lot of different wide receivers, because as we've seen through the years, you never really know who's going to end up on the field, who will develop, who will get some sort of instant chemistry with your quarterback. So the rep distribution is pretty hard to figure out, right? I mean, in minicamp and OTAs, when JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold were battling it out. We saw in even the mini camps and OTAs that Sam Darnold would take every rep with Justin Jefferson. I don't know if JJ McCarthy threw Jefferson a football the entire spring that year in 2024. So how often do we see the top wide receivers with each quarterback? Might be a little bit of a way to figure that out, because usually there's not 11 on 11s. And if there are, the offensive and defensive lines are not really doing anything, kind of just standing there playing patty cake, because again, it's OTAs. Like, it's the learning phase. It's O'Connell called it last year a passing camp. Like, that's what they're trying to do here, is lock in their passing game. But there will maybe be enough by the end of minicamp that we see to get some feeling for, okay, did Kyler Murray take 90% of the dropbacks when Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson were in there with, let's just say, the starting offensive line, if that's how it's going, if they're doing 11 on 11 stuff, which is not that often during a camp like this. So we want to be a little bit careful about saying, oh, that was definitely a first team rep, because sometimes you might have Justin Jefferson and he's in there with, I don't know, Miles Price, and you go, well, what is this? It's just a drill, right? And even versus the defense can be a little bit hard to figure out. But will we get a sense for first team, second team, who's taking the majority of the reps really with the top wide receivers? That will be the one thing we can really look for in terms of competition or situation or whatever you guys want to call this, what we have here with Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy. What I'll be looking for most with Kyler Murray throughout first, to make sure that he is in attendance for the OTAs, because technically OTAs are not mandatory. Now, the Vikings have had terrific attendance in everything since Kevin O'Connell got here, and really even going back to Mike Zimmer. I don't remember too many guys just skipping OTAs unless they had a contract situation, which will be worth looking at if there's nobody or if there's anybody missing. If it's Brian O'Neill, I would be very surprised if someone like O'Neill or Cashman wasn't there just because they don't have a contract for next year. But it has happened before in the past. Stephon Diggs missed a day when he was maybe having some trouble, and Kyle Rudolph missed a couple days, and Barr, I think, also when they were looking for contract extension. So that does happen. But anyway, assuming that Kyler Murray is there and is participating in all of the events, instant signs of chemistry will be something that we're looking for, because Justin Jefferson is a little bit unique in the way he runs his routes. That has not given most quarterbacks any issues at all, but getting on the same page did take a little while for Sam Darnold. There was, the Jefferson, right? Jefferson did not come to OTAs when he was negotiating his contract the second year. They did it 2 different years. And then when he got there at minicamp, he and Sam Darnold had to ramp up a little bit. It took a little while into training camp. So Kyler Murray, how does it look when he throws a football to Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, or Jordan Addison? Because if the Minnesota Vikings are going anywhere, Kyler Murray is going to have to throw footballs to those guys successfully. And we saw what happens when that is not effective last year, is the offense really, really struggles. And even though I think that the running game can improve, this is a team that will have to rely on a top 10 passing offense. If they don't have it, they're probably not making the playoffs considering their division. And that's making it bigger than it is for OTAs. But what you would like to see is just that the timing clicks pretty quickly, even in something like this. And I will go back to previous experience with Kirk Cousins in 2018, when he really was not adapting very well to the offense and was kind of throwing it all over the place. And one of the more memorable things that Kirk ever did as a Vikings quarterback for me was he got so flustered in that mini camp that he threw the ball into the road out at TCO Performance Center. And those of us who ever questioned how far Kirk could throw a football, we saw it there, because it's a long way out to the road, and he whipped it all the way over the gate. So we don't want to see that from Kyler Murray. You don't want to see signs of frustration. And Sam Darnold, there were some anticipation throws and throws into certain windows right away that we started to get that hint of like, okay, I mean, there's something here with this guy and his arm and his talent that I'm sure if you go back to minicamp breakdowns that we did in 2024, that we were talking about that quite a bit. So can we pick up any hints of that chemistry from him? And then we're also looking for improvement from JJ McCarthy. Now that is going to be a little bit dicey to try to pick apart, but one of the things that we've always seen from McCarthy, even when he was practicing well last year during training camp, is the inconsistency when it comes to his throwing. And you can go back to whatever part of JJ McCarthy's very young career, and that's something that if you listen to any post whatever podcast, we're talking about it. Last year during training camp, I thought it got better and better. I will always be convinced that if he had not gotten hurt in week 2, he would have bounced back. He would have beat Cincinnati. He would have picked up some confidence and maybe things go a little bit of a different way. But he's had all offseason to work on this. I don't expect that he's throwing the ball differently, because I don't think his throwing motion was that far off. I think it just needed to be refined. And I also am interested to see how often he can connect with Jefferson out there in these practices, because those two have been doing work off to the side during the offseason. So they've been, Jefferson joked that it was an undisclosed location that he was getting together with JJ McCarthy and throwing together and working on, when the ball's got to come out, when he's getting out of his breaks, some of the stuff that they didn't really get last year during training camp and hurt them all season long. So are we seeing a little bit more refined JJ McCarthy? You could say, hey, didn't you guys say that he had a very good training camp? And he did. Like, he got better and better throughout last year's training camp. And that's why these things do come with the caveats of, well, look, we're not going to get to the end of the spring and say he's fixed or he's terrible. We're going to probably say we'll have to wait and see until training camp and where this ends up going. But in general, I think you can pick up on when players have made gains. So I'll give you just some examples of like KJ Osborne or Jalen Naylor, guys like that. We have seen this before. Cornerbacks, wide receivers, quarterbacks, when they have been getting better or when they are a good fit, sometimes you see a little flash of that right away. Is Kyler Murray getting it right away? Is JJ McCarthy connecting with receivers consistently or still struggling with the accuracy when they get out there and start running at maybe 68%, call it. Not anywhere close to game speed, but still, like, they're moving out there and they're running their plays, and does the ball come out in time, and things like that we'll all be looking for. And the thing is about the quarterback situation in general is that the onus is on JJ McCarthy to prove that he has improved. So we clearly know, based on their histories, that there is no similarity between Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy. Kyler Murray has had very high highs in his career. He's had stretches where people talked about him as the MVP. He's taken a team to the playoffs. He has been in Pro Bowls. He has had very good seasons in his career, where JJ McCarthy last year was nowhere close to the level of a starting quarterback who can take a team to the postseason, or that is going to be the reason they get there. If you want to get into that, like, of course, yes, you could get to the playoffs if you're Kyle Bowler for the Ravens, if you have the best defense, but you know what I mean, like, drive a team to the postseason. That we didn't see that last year. So the proof is really on JJ McCarthy to come and show that there are these improvements and that things should be interesting in training camp, because if over these weeks it's nowhere close, Kyler Murray is way out in front, he's completing every pass, McCarthy's still airmailing it and struggling with timing and the offense and everything else. And I know it's only been a couple months for him to get on the practice field and work on these things, but those are really important months for improvement when you are at a young age as a quarterback. So if he still looks way behind, then they're going to start training camp with Kyler Murray and not even think twice about who the starting quarterback is. Whereas if he's extremely sharp and they're kind of going back and forth, then things could be a little bit more interesting. Of course, Murray came here to be the starting quarterback. Of course, he came here to prove narratives wrong about him and to win with these great talented wide receivers and this coach who was coach of the year in 2024. So I don't expect that there's much of a world where JJ McCarthy could be so much better than Kyler Murray because he's already a top 12 quarterback. But can you have us talking about it? Can you have us talking about at any point in the spring, hey, JJ McCarthy looks like he's really connecting with a lot of wide receivers. His timing looks really good. His accuracy looks like it's improved. He's more consistent. Can he have us talking about those things? So that's how I view the quarterback competition or quarterback situation is, can JJ have us walking out of these practices saying, okay, and that's not anything that we're going to judge his entire career off of or what training camp's going to be like or his season. And one thing that Vikings fans know better than anyone is that anything can happen at the quarterback position. Anything is on the table. If Case Keenum can go to the NFC Championship, then anything is possible, as Kevin Garnett said. So we won't decide all those things now, but it's all about hints when it comes to OTAs and minicamp. So I got a couple other things that I want to look at, and jump in the comments here. What's on your mind? What would you like us to be looking for? Because as we do these post-practice podcasts, Dane and I, which you'll see on Wednesday, late afternoon, Wednesday after we record it, is really trying to answer questions that you guys have, whether it's something at the podium, something on the field, or someone coming off the field, a player to talk to. So I'm very interested in what you guys would like to see. So let me look at a couple other storylines here, and then we'll get to your comments, and we'll have a fun conversation here on Memorial Day. Okay, next thing is the new GM. Like, when are we getting a new general manager would be the first thing. And then what does that new GM do? See, I'm looking at it in terms of storylines over the next 4 weeks, really, is when this is going on. Not just Wednesday, but over the next 4 weeks. So I imagine within the next 4 weeks, they want to get a general manager in here. In fact, I would think that they would want to do it by June so they can at least have conversations about what are we doing after June 1st? Are you making additions? Are you talking extensions? Like, kind of out of the frying pan and into the fire for whomever the general manager will be. So assuming that a new GM is on the way, what will this new general manager do? Whether that's Brzezinski or whoever else, what is their first move? Is it going to be contract extensions? And I'm going to offer up some advice to the Vikings. See if you can get Isaiah Rodgers on a contract extension, because he was really good last year, top 20 by PFF. And I know he had his ups and downs, but the highs are part of Isaiah Rodgers' game. I don't expect him to have the Cincinnati game ever again, but in terms of being explosive and making plays, I think there's more where that came from. I think that they were overall short on opportunities last year because teams were just running against them so much. But if you could slow down the run a little bit, play from ahead a little bit, somebody like Isaiah Rodgers could have a big year. And I would want to get him extended earlier than later, because if you wait it out and he has a big season, then you're talking about probably paying him a lot more than you want to. But the big names are Cashman and O'Neal for me. Are you going to sign? Van Ginkel can also be tossed into this as well. But are you going to sign either one of those guys to a contract extension? These are important players, key positions, but there's also an argument to not do it for any of these guys, for whether it's O'Neal, Cashman, or Van Ginkel. There's an argument to not do it because of age and injury history. And regardless of how great they've been during their careers as Vikings, you have to play the economics game of that. Will a new GM come in, extend these players to keep them around, or will he wait and see? And we do see spring extensions sometimes. Jefferson was, but through the years, we've had different ones during June, right? I don't think all of them have come before training camp, especially during KOC and Kwesi. It was a little less predictable than it was with Rick Spielman, where it was always like, we're kicking off training camp with a big extension, right? So this could be a little different. Do we see those negotiations start to kick up during this time. What about additions from the free agent pool? I think, we've gone over this a handful of times, but I would throw out there the guard position. There's probably 3 or 4 guys that they could use as deep depth at the guard spot because they don't have any experience there now. Outside linebacker, I think, is absolutely vital. Leaving Jake Golday as the only backup for your outside linebackers other than undrafted free agents seems very risky to me. So can you get a Kyle Van Noy or Leonard Floyd to show up? Running back, I would even throw out there. I mean, there's a couple of running backs out there that are still on the free agent market. Najee Harris. Antonio Gibson is kind of an interesting one who had his moments with the New England Patriots and is kind of a running back / receiver. Maybe you throw something in there at the running back position with a free agent. But I think across the board, they've added a couple of defensive tackles that are deep on the depth chart. Will they add someone more of significance is a question during this spring. This is kind of a time to do it rather than waiting till right before training camp and then the person has to get onboarded with no, OTAs or minicamp. So after June 1st is the time to do it. And what will we learn during this time from the new GM's introduction? I mean, we're going to have a press conference. We're going to hear from that person and we're going to get a sense for what their vision is for this team. So what will we learn? That is a big storyline that should be going on through OTAs and minicamp. And I got to say, it's easily the first time we've ever talked about something like that at this time of year. What's this person who's going to have a massive impact on the future going to be talking about during OTAs that's a new one. So those are some of the storylines surrounding the GM that could crop up during this time. How about the rookies? So we're not going to see Caleb Banks more likely than not do anything out on the field. I suppose it's possible, but just the timeline that we've been given seems like it's much more he's going to be ready for training camp with the foot. But will we get an update? I'm sure we will, on Caleb Banks and just where he stands in that recovery. So Kevin O'Connell told us during rookie minicamp that he's on point, no issues, very happy with where he's at. So we'll look for another health update. Any setbacks? Is he on track for getting back in training camp, or could we see him do, maybe anything during this time of year? We'll be looking for that, the first round pick. Also curious about Jake Golday and where he's going to be or what he's going to be doing. Again, with the lack of 11 on 11s in these camps, can we really get a good idea of, is he an inside or is he an outside linebacker? But maybe, if you watch like the 7 on 7s, is he playing on the inside? Is he playing on the outside? Just to get a little bit of a feel of where they want him for a starting point. Because I mentioned the lack of depth at outside linebacker. Is he going to be there? Is he going to be trying different positions? Or do they view him right off the bat as much more of an Eric Wilson backup? And then they're going to build on that foundation. That's kind of how I expect it to happen. And KOC has kind of hinted that a little bit. But I'm very curious to see him get out there and move around and just see what it looks like. Because from his college tape, Golday has great athleticism. He's very, very good in space, which is great for kind of a 7 on 7 type of scenario. So how does he look at the NFL level? Charles Demings is a guy that I'll be watching very closely during the OTAs and minicamp because while he is a 5th round pick, he's a great athlete. One of the best athletes in the NFL Combine this year. And he played at Stephen F. Austin, so he's not going to get talked about a whole heck of a lot. And FCS players were just flat out ignored. I was looking into this earlier. There were no FCS players that were taken in the first 3 rounds, which is the first time that's happened since 1978. So Demings would not get a lot of attention from NFL teams. So the Vikings pick him. I think he is a higher upside type of player, even though he's in the 5th round because of where he comes from, and there's still development to go. But this is the type of scenario where you see OTAs and minicamp where someone like Demings can flash a little bit and make that first impression that we've seen some other guys make through the years during this camp. Any signs from Damon Claiborne would be interesting. I mentioned how much he stood out in rookie minicamp, but they're not exactly handing off and going, NFL films. Like there's not a lot of that in minicamp, but can we get at least a sense for him, how he moves out there with other NFL players around him? A rookie minicamp was like, draft that guy. But, how does it look when the other guys are out there? And the biggest thing here is UDFA receivers and corners. UDFA receivers and corners can make a very strong first impression here. And there have been guys through the years who have made the team where we were kind of like standing, oftentimes we stand on this hill and kind of look down on the practice field. We'll be standing out there being like, are we really looking at each other saying that Chad Beebe looks good? And we were, and he made the team several times. BC Johnson, it was a 7th round draft pick, but another guy that stood out in the OTA minicamp. And we really got the sign of first jump from a KJ Osborne, from a Jalen Naylor. Do we see that from someone like Ty Felton is another thing as well. But if you're an undrafted free agent, if you're Dylan Bell, for example, or Marcus Sanders from Georgia Southern, you can shine in this camp because it's a lot of I beat you, or I know the offense well enough to get open, catch the football. So we'll be looking very closely at that. And also Marcus Allen is another guy that stood out to me during rookie minicamp from North Carolina. He is a corner, just, good movement skill, where you kind of, when you're at rookie minicamp, you can kind of point out like, yeah, most of these guys just don't move at all like an NFL player. And Allen stood out to me. So that'll be another guy that I keep an eye on. Also, and my last one here before I get to your questions, comments, and thoughts is early signs. And I mean the earliest of signs. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves, folks. This is the summer, okay? Like, we're taking this slow. It's not as intense as training camp. I don't even look how poorly my face did today when getting a little bit of sun. I'm not even like prepared yet to be outside for long practices. So we're taking it early here, slow. But depth wide receiver is wide open. Ty Felton. Can he prove that he belongs in some role behind Juwan Jennings? And look, these guys, they've all been injured at one time or another. Jennings has been banged up a little, and Jefferson has had a thing or two, and Addison's had a thing or two. So Ty Felton's got to be ready. And anybody else, it is wide open there. Miles Price, I mentioned Marcus Sanders, Dylan Bell. There's going to be guys. Dante Fleming was a guy who last year stood out in practice a lot with Max Brosmer and made some plays in preseason games, got really good speed. So is he somebody that they could keep on the roster? I mean, it's Jayshon Jones has been around for now 3 years. Is this the year that he finally kind of breaks through and makes it? So depth wide receiver is really interesting. Depth corner as well, because you have, Demings, but then there's Zemiah Vaughn, who was a guy we talked about a lot last year, but never really got on the field and was on the practice squad. Dwight McGlothern is still here year after year. Dwight McGlothern is still here. Is there anybody that can kind of come for those spots and start to make an impression in minicamp? Backup interior offensive line is on the list of a position battle, even though in this camp you're not going to solve that. Safety, though, what are they going to do at safety? Harrison Smith has not signed. He's not here. So will they have, Theo Jackson and Jay Ward playing together? Will it be Josh Metellus and one of those two? Will we get a sense for where it stands? And I just wrote punter, even though we don't see them kick a lot during these camps, but I don't care. I am keeping a very freaking close eye on that punting competition. I think Johnny Hecker's going to be in good shape, but Brett Thorson, I don't know. I mean, he punted the heck out of the ball in college. So if he can hold, maybe. We'll be keeping an eye on that, but I don't know how much I'll learn from this camp. Anyway, quick FanDuel question of the day, by the way, and then we will get to the fan chat. FanDuel question of the day is this. The Vikings, after the schedule was released, their line moved ever so slightly on FanDuel, and they are now plus 500 to win the division. So they had been plus 600, but now they're plus 500. They're still last 4 out of 4 teams, but it's very close between them and Chicago, who's plus 320. Here's what I'm getting at. Where's your confidence after the schedule released and they've got Juwan Jennings and you have a pretty darn good sense for this team? Where's your confidence that they can, let's just say, outperform where the FanDuel folks have them? So are you super confident that they will not be the worst team in the NFC North? Or are you still got to see it first before you can say that they're going to be better than that? Because that's where they are right now in the odds. But how confident are you that they could be much better than that? All right, so let me get to your comments and then any questions that are on your mind. So it doesn't have to be OTAs, minicamp. It could just be roster, NFL, whatever you're thinking about. Football, happy to answer anything that you're thinking about. So let us jump right in. We'll start with JP. Says, don't think there's a real competition. If there is, it'll end before minicamp. I hope JJ can take this year to develop behind the scenes and win the QB2 job and be good just in case Kyler goes down. That's kind of how I see it, JP. In fact, the ideal world, I think it's actually better for JJ McCarthy to lock in the QB2 job, have to prepare for every single game like he's going to play, be behind Kyler, be ready when Kyler, I don't want to say inevitably because he's played full seasons, but he's also had seasons where just 2021, for example, he went 9-5 as a starter. He had a couple games where he was banged up and Colt McCoy had to come in and go 2-1 as a starter. So it's happened before with Kyler, and that was actually what was supposed to happen last year with Jacoby Brissett until they intentionally benched him to go to the bottom and draft Jeremiah Love. And now somehow Jacoby Brissett wants more money after going 1-11. But that's someone else's podcast. I don't quite fully understand that, but I guess if they're planning on having him be a QB1, maybe, I don't know what you're not really holding out with a lot of leverage when they have two other quarterbacks there that will probably perform just about the same. But anyway, point being that Kyler has been banged up in his career. So if JJ McCarthy comes into minicamp, looks really, really good this spring, over the times that we see him. They have more practices than we get to see, but we get to see a good chunk. So I think it's, 2, 5, usually 5 or 6 practices. So let's just say he impresses everybody. They really love how he looks. He goes into training camp and does really well throughout the entire camp. I still think you're starting Kyler Murray based on his track record and the high end of Kyler Murray. And look, putting his career up against Jared Goff has had downs in his career, and Caleb Williams really struggled and even struggled at times last year. And Jordan Love has had ups and downs in his career. You're putting him against those guys where you think in any given season, Kyler Murray could be the best of the lot of this group based on just his past. And I was looking this up again yesterday that since 2020, Kyler Murray's on target percentage, so accurate throws, is the 9th best in the NFL. He's going to get the ball to his open wide receivers, and he's going to make plays. And the last time he played a full season, he ran for 500 yards, and you're going to win with him. My favorite stat, I'm going to have to double check this one or look it up again, is that I think that they won 8% of their games that Kyler hasn't played in Arizona over his career. So it's and Colt McCoy had 2 of them in that 2021 season. So anyway, not the point. It's just that, Kyler is at a very, very different spot in his career, which matches up really well with where this roster is and where this coach is. This coach needs to win. This roster needs to win. This quarterback needs to win. And he's 28 and he's been around the block and he's ready to go. You'd much rather see JJ McCarthy learn, be ready, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Because he's still under contract, and sometimes people will say, they got to find out about McCarthy. Well, one, they found out a lot about McCarthy last year. So you can't throw out 10 starts and 4 injuries and say, well, we still don't know anything about him. No, we know a heck of a lot about him, actually. We know how far away he is. If he played much, much better, he would have still been the 20th best quarterback in the league last year. So we know where he's got to go. It's just how long that takes to get there is a total mystery with any player, but he is under contract still. So you don't have to, this rookie contract just creates so much panic, and it's not just fans or media, it's also teams. But Jordan Love took the 3 years to develop, then turned out to be really good, and then they figured it out with his contract, and they've been competitive every single year. It doesn't have to, and he signed his deal when everybody was getting $50 million, where that's really been reined in by the NFL over the last couple of years. Daniel Jones didn't get there. Sam Darnold didn't get there. Baker Mayfield didn't get there. So it doesn't have to be this. If we don't know everything about JJ McCarthy by the end of this year, then it is just over for the franchise. Like it doesn't work like that. And this is why I like to watch a lot of old games and stuff and go back in history, because before the rookie quarterback contract became such a thing, and it is important, and we banged the drum for it, and I thought it was right to try to go to JJ McCarthy in the long-term plan when Kirk was here and everything. I thought that was the right idea to try to get the young quarterback on the rookie contract. But the landscape has changed to where it's not a death knell to your chances of building a good team. And we've seen that. I mean, San Francisco was in the divisional round with Brock Purdy under contract. Jalen Hurts won the Super Bowl with a big contract. Sam Darnold, the second contract. Matthew Stafford. So it doesn't have to destroy your franchise anymore. My point is that if McCarthy was to, let's say that Murray is just okay, and McCarthy really shows some stuff, and they decide what we're going to do is let Murray go and have McCarthy as part of a quarterback competition with someone next year because we really like what we saw, and then it works out, well, you could sign him to a long-term contract after that. It's just there's so much rush now to have all of the answers right away, and there's so many quarterbacks throughout history where you didn't have the answers right away. That was the first comment, by the way. I'll try to speed it up a little bit more to get through more of your comments. I'm really thrilled that so many of you want to talk football tonight, by the way. I was thinking about, like, because I didn't do a show, Saturday or Sunday. I was like, well, we'll wait till Monday and we'll see if anybody wants to jump in on the live show. And here you guys are. So I'm very happy about that. Digital Plains Media says, I think it's best for McCarthy and the team if he sat the bench for one season. Full season of being healthy and working on his game behind the scenes and away from the media and social media. Man, you hit the nail on the head with that. Like having a no pressure environment to get himself, I think, settled in the things that he needs to improve, and more practice is all just throws. I mean, this is like, I think about this all the time with McCarthy and just how little opportunity from the time he left high school to just throw the football to receivers running routes. It is less than almost anybody in the National Football League right now. It's incredibly less than most of the people in his draft class. Caleb Williams threw twice as many passes. Penix and Nix threw 3 times as many passes. And then in his first year, he doesn't even get to 250 for attempts. This is very rare that a quarterback is this inexperienced still going into year 3, but you can't accelerate it just by hoping, right? And then they tried that last year. I mean, they really did last year. They tried to accelerate where he was in his development by kind of hoping and believing too much in themselves and the supporting cast and not anticipating that, hey, they could have guys get hurt. Like if the Vikings were completely healthy last year, and the Packers, Packers fans and Lions fans would probably say the same thing, but just, stay with me. I mean, they probably win 11 or 12 games, even with JJ McCarthy struggling at times, because you'd have your left tackle blocking. That's going to help. You'd have your center who was all pro, is just fantastic. Ryan Kelly, amazing player, right? And they didn't have a lot of that stuff. But the reality is that's how the NFL works. It's just that someone like that is not necessarily equipped at their point in their career to be able to maneuver through a bunch of injuries, weakness on defense that we didn't expect him to have early in the season, all sorts of stuff like that. And then multiple stops and starts along the way. It really feels like a hard reset is a good thing for him where you are working on it behind the scenes. And I've had people, send me notes and say, well, you can't get better if you're not playing. And I think, well, that is just not true in any skill at all, right? Like if you're, let's think of a golfer, right? Can you not get better by practicing every day on the range or in putting? And yeah, you got to go play tournaments for sure. But if you're not ready to play tournaments, you're not going to keep up with the rest of the people in the tournament. You need to be hitting balls. You need to be practicing your putting, practicing. If that wasn't the case, then why would even the best players in the world spend so much freaking time practicing? It's any skill that you talk about. I mean, how many balls a day do you think Novak Djokovic hits still, right? He's still playing, isn't he? I don't know a lot about tennis, but if you're going to play against the best tennis players, then yeah, you need to play actual games. But if you're not ready to play actual games, if you're not able to keep up, then what do? You work on your game behind the scenes. So I think the practice can learn a lot, especially with timing, because you're in this practice setting and you're maybe running the scout team or whatever, but you can work on those throws time and time and time again. Receivers coming out of their breaks, anticipation with windows, and you can have conversations after practice. I wrote a story once about throwing after practice and how Kirk used to do it even in year whatever it was at the time, year 8 or 9 in the league. Kirk would still be one of the last guys off the field throwing after practice. So I asked Kirk and I asked Sean Mannion and I asked, I don't know, a couple other people, maybe quarterback coach, whoever it was at the time, just for this story. I think that was maybe 2022, maybe something like that. And I was just asking, like, why do they do that? And they were talking about, like, with someone like Kirk, you never know when another receiver is going to have to get bumped up because of an injury. So you want to have familiarity with them. And it's always just this constant process of trying to master every little tiny detail that they would do. So I think that practice like that, spending time after, working one-on-one, that was another thing, right? You could work a little more one-on-one with the quarterbacks, coaches. It's all helpful toward getting better. And if it wasn't, then I don't know if we would see so many success stories of guys who did have that practice time without the pressure that you're talking about. JP, I know this isn't the topic, but really curious about the GM hire. I like Rob, but if he'll stay, even if not made the GM, if they, I see. Yeah. Will he stay? I would suspect that he would. Yeah. I mean, Rob Brzezinski is one of the best in the league at what he does, and he has so much experience. And oftentimes, like, even if you are moving on from people in the front office in certain key positions to bring in your own people, a lot of times there's certain folks that you already know. I mean, if you're someone who worked for the Los Angeles Rams, like, you're probably familiar with Rob Brzezinski already. Like, these, just like in any sort of world where it's competitive, or even just, your colleagues, if you're in whatever company in one city, but who's good in another city. If it was The Office, it's like who's good in Stamford versus who's good in wherever they were. You know what I'm saying? So, like, people are very familiar with who he is and what he does. So I'd imagine that you want a person like that in your front office, plus the amount of trust that he has with the rest of the front office and so forth. And if you're Rob, I don't think that you're just taking your ball and going home. He's been here for way too long that, I mean, well, it'd be disappointing, I'm sure, if he did not get a president position or a GM position. I don't think he's going to say, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm out. I'm taking off my helmet with horns on it and I'm throwing it into Lake Minnetonka and I'm booking it out of here. I just can't see him doing that. But, when you're talking about like Teasley or McKay, Nolan Teasley and John McKay, Teasley is from Seattle, McKay is from Los Angeles. The thing that I like about both of them is that they come from the premier organizations in the NFC, and you can idea farm from these guys, even if you're not making these totally wild overhauls. You're not firing everyone in the entire front office. We know the Wilfs are not going to want them to do that they like a lot of the people they've had in place for a long time, but you can bring in new ways of thinking, and the directives come from the general manager. It's just like wherever you work. People would be shocked, I think, to find out how much of the NFL is the same as a corporate office. It's the same as the office, where as something comes down from the big bosses, and that would be your ownership, and this is what we want as our directives. This is how we want to play. This is what we want to do. And the executives are setting the agendas. And look, the GM's going to come in and say, after meeting with coaches and everything else, to the scouts, to the college director of scouting, to the pro personnel, this is what we're looking for. And here's the new ideas that I'm going to bring to the table. This might be a reason, to have Rob and someone else. 2 hires might be better than one, is to have new ideas, fresh ideas brought into the organization, but with the stability that the Wilfs really like. So those guys, even though they're not, when you say young, like they're not 20, but they're up and coming guys over the last 10 years, which I think is a fresh perspective from, Rob, who's been around a really long time. So you kind of hit in the middle. It's like a fresh perspective on player evaluation, scouting, because that's the world they come from the best teams at scouting and team building and so forth in the NFL. So I like those ideas as well. I mean, Reed Burkhardt also, we shouldn't shortchange Denver for what they've been able to do. Denver was mediocre as heck for a long time. And George Payton, remember, he left pretty much after the Vikings had built their really good teams that were sustained for a long time. Then he goes to Denver, and what have they done? They've built really good teams and through the defensive side a lot, which is what, he did under Mike Zimmer. So that's where Reed Burkhardt comes from. So I like the idea of having somebody who is, and Burkhardt was with the Vikings, but someone from another organization that's had a lot of success. So I like that idea. Mama says the competition will be between Wentz and McCarthy for QB2. I think overall that's true. And we know that Carson Wentz is not going to take a ton of reps in the preseason and training camp. I'd like to see JJ McCarthy play full halves of preseason games because I expect we're not going to see much Kyler Murray, that it will work very similar to the way that it did with Sam Darnold. Darnold started one preseason game. He played one drive, and that was enough. And I think Kirk did that. 1 year Kirk got sick and was not able to play. That was against Vegas in 2022. And I think in 23, he played one series, and that was it. It was like, all right, no more Kirk. Not going to get him hurt here. So I would expect that from Kyler Murray. I do not think that we're going to see him out there throwing 20, 30, 40 passes in the preseason. I'd love to see JJ McCarthy get a lot of work there. But if it's a struggle, you know what you have in Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz doesn't have to practice a single time and can be a fine backup quarterback as he showed last year. I think it's really crazy to say because Wentz was frustrating as heck sometimes, but I think Wentz is one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. I did this a couple years ago. I assume it hasn't changed much. The win percentage for backup quarterbacks is like 30% if they play. So, even going 2-3 is right around that. It's a little better than that. If he had gotten one more win against Philadelphia, one throw away, then man, like what did he play? He played five games, right? So, 3 out of 5 would have been great. That's what you have in Carson Wentz. You know exactly what you have in Carson Wentz. So you know where the bar is for JJ McCarthy to beat. And where Wentz is excellent is knowing the offense and knowing how to run it. It's just not a coincidence that last year Wentz came in and Justin Jefferson had his 3 biggest games with Carson Wentz. And that's just knowing the offense. It's a signal that you know the offense. That's when we make the jokes about Nick Mullins. Well, Nick Mullins' biggest strength was knowing stuff. It wasn't accuracy and it wasn't arm strength. It was he could run. This guy 2 different times just came off the bench, right? And had to throw a pass, or didn't have to, but Kevin O'Connell called the pass and he was ready to go. That Chicago game, 2024, he comes off the bench. Nick Mullins, comes off the bench and throws a completion on a 3rd down when Sam Darnold went down with an ankle issue. And then Darnold comes back in, plays amazing, wins the game. But it's like, that dude was ready for anything. That's what you have to be as a backup. And we know Wentz is the same way, but is McCarthy that way? Is he ready enough to come in at any given time? And that's what he has to prove. Mr. Mayor, there is no quarterback competition, just doesn't benefit the team to say Kyler is the starter. I agree with that. And also, if you're Kevin O'Connell, and man, he's really good at this kind of thing, is you're kind of walking a delicate dance because what you want is to have the full confidence of Kyler Murray that you're my guy, you're a starter, you might be the starter for the future, and I believe in you, and let's go, we can win the division and everything else, right? That's what you want from Kyler Murray. That you want KOC and Kyler Murray to have the same thing with Sam Darnold where it was let's prove the world wrong. And I think they really galvanized on that point with O'Connell and Sam Darnold. Let's show everybody that your past does not define your future. And I think the same thing with Kyler Murray. Everything I've heard from Murray is that he's very, very motivated to show that what happened in Arizona is not who he is. It's not who his legacy, if you will, is going to be in the NFL. And especially the way that it ended in Arizona. And so if you have a coach who is very motivated to prove that what happened last year is not the passing offense that Kevin O'Connell runs on the field, and a quarterback who is super talented that is highly motivated to show that the narratives are wrong about him, that's a really good combination, I think. But then where does JJ McCarthy fit in that? Because McCarthy also has every reason to show last year was not him. But if you're O'Connell, you need Kyler Murray to come here and win games for you because he is the more proven and better quarterback. But with JJ McCarthy, you also don't want him to just go off to the side and be angry that the team gave up on him. So how do you keep him engaged, keep the quarterback room close and working toward a common goal, because you might need any of those guys at any time? I think that's not an easy thing to do, but probably this is where, some people will, kind of make jokes or whatever about O'Connell and, his culture and that kind of thing. But it's like, this comes in handy when you have a dicey, tricky kind of situation here to be able to navigate through, because you might still have JJ McCarthy as your long-term quarterback someday. So you don't want to just be like, JJ, can you just go stand in the corner while I work with Kyler? So I think that that's part of the reason to not, and KOC's going to get asked about it and I'll be interested in his answer, but I think his answer is going to be, yeah, I don't think is it week 1? I don't think I have to name a starter. Let's go practice and see where we're at every day. That's the right approach from O'Connell. P. Gullick, how Dallas Turner shows up knowing he's got more of a primary role now. Yeah, I mean, I think that's more of a training camp thing, but for sure, something that I guarantee, this is a good point, that we'll talk with Dallas Turner and just getting his reaction to that. I mean, Dallas last year showed me a lot in terms of his personality, because you never know with young players. You never have any idea. They could come out of college with the most, this guy is the highest character, hardest worker, best human of all time. And then the minute they get in the NFL, they're either overwhelmed or frustrated or scared, or they got millions of dollars and they don't care anymore because they bought themselves a new Lamborghini. Happens all the time. So Dallas Turner, his first year, you're like, okay, he seems to be getting it, but there's some signs that I don't really know. And then last year shows up to training camp after working out with Grenard, which I thought was huge. And then Grenard told me last year, I wrote about this, Grenard told me last year that he believes in Dallas Turner. And this was not like do you believe in Dallas Turner? Yeah, I guess I believe in Dallas Turner. No, it wasn't that way. It was like a genuine conversation we were having. But he was insistent that Dallas Turner is on his way and that he believes in him. And I think he told the Philly media or another interview the same thing, that he is very excited for Turner. So those two gelling says a lot, because Jonathan Grenard sets a very high standard for character for NFL players. Work ethic, leadership, toughness. I mean, drive. Look how many snaps that guy played. He played through a pretty bad injury last year until they finally shut him down, and I guarantee he didn't want to. So like, if that's a guy you're buying into, and then we saw him get bigger. That was a big thing in training camp last year, stronger and grow throughout the season. But yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a great one to talk about, is catching Dallas Turner at some point, having a conversation with him, and just seeing his reaction to now having this very clear path to becoming the star that they wanted him to be. Scamping around competition with the Pinocchio emoji. Yeah, I don't think a lot of you are really buying it, and you're probably right. But I will say that if you're Kevin O'Connell, you should be prepared for just about anything, because the NFL has already thrown at you everything over the first 4 years at the quarterback position. You have at first Kirk Cousins in 2022, not really getting the offense and getting frustrated. And then Kirk kind of turns a corner, wins a bunch of crazy games in the end, has a great start to 2023, tears his Achilles. You do the Dobbs thing. I mean, my goodness, it has been a journey at the quarterback position. So you never want to count anything out that could happen along the way at the quarterback spot. And that's why they convinced Carson Wentz to come back. Mr. Mayor, Kyler could easily be hit by a bus is the first one you go with there. Tear his Achilles or decide he wants to retire and sell handcrafted necklaces. That's funny. In any of those cases, it would hurt the team to have said JJ McCarthy is clearly number 2. That's well done. That's well said, Mr. Mayor. You're exactly right. If he decides to quit and sell handcrafted necklaces, then he could go on House Hunters, because that always seems to be a job that earns people $1 million budget for their houses. But if he does that, then yes, JJ better be ready. Digital Plains Media, even if Kyler got hit by a bus, I still think he wins over McCarthy. Okay, that's funny. Joker, say I'm the new GM. KO wants to draft quarterback in the top 10, and I have graded as a second rounder. How should this situation be handled? Who gets their way? Just a random scenario. Yeah, just a random scenario, huh? It is an interesting one, because at this moment, I don't know the answer to that. And will we know the answer to that even after we get to know who the next general manager is? The quarterback situation for the next GM is front and center. It's the number one thing. Are you going to keep Kyler Murray? Are you looking to draft a quarterback next year? Are you looking to even do this thing where some quarterback always seems to come available that can win with your team? It's like a year-to-year thing. And if Kyler Murray plays well, but he doesn't win the Super Bowl, I mean, are you looking at someone like Baker Mayfield, who I believe his contract is up after this year? And I don't know if they've had extension talks or not, but they didn't extend him, at least as of this moment, I'm pretty sure. So, like, is it someone like that where there's always, with these contracts, it's become very interesting. Like, there's always guys that are Russell Wilson or now Kyler who are kind of coming off the contract, trying to win somewhere else. It's a new universe than it was even 5 or 6 years ago, where we didn't really see this happening. So you never know who could become available. Joe Burrow after this year, right? But to your scenario, I would assume that one of the jobs of the next general manager is to be a check and balance. And that is the thing that I would like to see most. No matter who is in charge, no matter how the structure goes, you have to have checks and balances, because coaches are not front office people. They, in this case, are very good evaluators. I think that Brian Flores is as great of an evaluator as I have been around. I think Mike Zimmer was overall very, very good. And then they kind of got desperate and drafted corners that didn't work out and stuff. But, you know, Zimmer, how many players played for Zimmer and then went somewhere else and performed really well, right? Like, so I think that he was very good at evaluating fits. I think Flores has been unbelievable at evaluating fits for his defense. And O'Connell has been good at it at a lot of positions, but also maybe a little bit desperate at some positions. At the guard spot, paying $18 million a year for Will Fries, or if you look at, quarterback and, being desperate to draft your franchise guy. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have drafted McCarthy or he wasn't worthy of that draft pick. I think every quarterback, we saw this from Ty Simpson, every quarterback is going to go higher than they should, most of the time. Just based on how good of a football player, because it's worth so much more. So I don't know about if you're the GM and you are evaluating a quarterback as a second round draft pick, and your coach is saying that, hey, I need this guy, he's great. I would prefer that the general manager and the entire front office and scouting staff win out in that point. But there were probably instances that the check and balance was actually KOC before, because I think, Kwesi probably as being a little more, at least analytics thoughtful, maybe put it that way. I don't know if driven would be the right word, but thoughtful, understood analytics really well. Probably wanted to take some swings at quarterbacks that KOC sort of rejected. So you want them to be on the same page. But if they're not, the GM is supposed to be the one, because it's not just him. It's it's the scouting staff. It's the director of college scouting. And if they're all sitting there saying, we just don't see it with this guy, but the coach says, well, I love him, then the answer should be, then we'll draft him in the second. We'll draft him where we have him on our board. And that's what Rob Brzezinski said that really stuck out to me at the combine. He said that the biggest thing was for them that they stay to their board and that they don't reach on somebody just because you need it. You don't talk yourself into it. You don't see it through rose-colored glasses. You objectively, this guy is not a first-round draft pick, so we're not taking him there. You want the GM or whoever's making the decisions to have the cachet to say, I'm sorry, I know you want this guy, and you're going to hate me if he turns out to be good, but we just don't see it. That's what I would like to see. But how the distribution of power works out is very interesting. Bitter Bruce would love to hear if McCarthy has vastly improved his ability to throw different speeds and layering. I was stunned to see how much the drop percentages went up with McCarthy at quarterback. And that was a main reason. I also think that, rhythm is such a big thing in all sports. I was talking about tennis and golf. I mean, any of you who are decent golfers, you understand this. I mean, if you get in a rhythm, you can start reeling off pars one after the next. But if you hit one in the woods and then 350 and then, hit the top of the ball and roll it along the fairway and then chip it right onto the green, you have no idea what's coming next. And I think that's a hard place to be in all sports. If you play basketball with someone and they're a point guard and one pass to you in the corner is way up over your head and one is way down at your feet and then one is right on, or it's thrown 1,000 miles an hour, it's harder to catch and shoot that, right? Even if you're a great shooter. So I think that it wasn't just that he threw it too hard. I think it was the erratic nature of it just in general. The timing wasn't quite right. The location wasn't all that great. The velocity was then coming in at 100 miles an hour every time. It is something Jefferson talked about working on McCarthy with. I think so much of that is timing. I think that most of these plays are timed out to the number of drop, hitch, throw. And if you do it with the right timing, you shouldn't have to rip it. But to your point, yeah, I mean, do we get some more of those throws? Does it look a little bit softer, a little bit more touch, a little bit more craft to it during these OTAs and minicamp? And if we see 6 total practices from him, we're not going to have the answer at the end of the day, but we might have oh boy, I mean, he had a lot of those completions where he did put touch on the ball. And it's hard to compare because there were some last year during training camp. And then when it got into the game, it kind of went back to, and that's why you need more and more and more, because just to stick with golf analogies, I'm playing this week at some point, it's like 90 degrees out, like I'm ready. But just to stick with golf analogies, it's the same sort of thing of like, if you go to the range every once in a while and okay, I got it. Like that's not going to translate to the actual course. It usually has to be more and more time. You have to go to the range every day. You have to have thousands of hours on a task. So how much has the work that he's done in this offseason helped him improve that? I think we can at least get a feeling for it. That's the best we'll be able to do here. Mr. Mayor, I don't think it's completely impossible that McCarthy was not KOC approved. He can be called the QB killer all he wants, but the team couldn't leave the 24 draft empty-handed no matter what KOC saw in him. So this is my thing. I will always say this about what happened in 2024 with the draft with JJ McCarthy. If it doesn't work out in the end, is the people who were there will not tell the real story of what happened and who was on board and who wasn't. And the people on the outside are always going to wonder exactly who said what and who believed what and everything else. Always. But I believe what they said at the time, which was Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said that there were quarterbacks in that draft who would be more like guys who could drive your success for many years and you could pay them and they're going to be great. That's your Caleb Williams, your Drake May, and your Jaden Daniels. And there were guys in that draft that you're going to have to build the whole thing around them and make sure you have as stout of a roster as you could possibly have and as much support. And I think that was Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, and Bo Nix. And so far, Bo Nix is the only one that's worked out of that group. But I think that was the way that they viewed it. I also will kind of always wonder, did they actually want Penix and they were shocked that he was taken by Atlanta? We'll never really get that answer. But KOC told, I think it was Albert Breer, about going to Michigan and sitting down with JJ McCarthy and those two clicking on the whiteboard and everything else. And then I was there when KOC called him the franchise quarterback in Cleveland. I mean, if anybody is going back and saying, well, no, I wasn't the one who, I just don't believe you. You'd make a draft pick of a quarterback and you know that you might not be able to trade up for Drake May, and at least must have a sense for what your order is after that. If you're going to make the draft pick, if you're going to spend the 10th pick, if you're even going to move up a spot just in case to secure your guy, then you're all responsible, you're all in, and if it goes wrong, it's on everybody. It's not just on one person. And this idea, and I've seen it floated like, well, maybe it was Kwesi pushing for them to get rid of it. But the same thing goes for this. If you are going to get rid of a quarterback who wins 14 games and throws 35 touchdowns, you cannot tell me that the only guy involved was the GM. Really? Because your coach just won Coach of the Year, working every single day on him. And who was Sam Darnold's biggest advocate for coming to Minnesota? Kevin O'Connell. So it's pretty hard to believe any of this stuff. They're all responsible. It's one of the biggest gaffes in NFL history. Then they're all responsible for it. And that's why you have to start Kyler Murray, honestly, is because if you run back out there again with JJ McCarthy and it doesn't work, I don't know how you ever recover from that, right? So they need to recover from that this year. There's a lot of pressure on. I think the summer softens everything. It's like, oh, well, McCarthy won some games down the stretch. Like, well, yeah. Go back to how you felt after the Ravens game, after the Bears game, right? Go back to the injury. Like, how did you feel when it was the Packers game and another injury? Did you feel like this was going the right way, or that it was going to need a lot more time? So it kind of evens out everything. Like, oh yeah, I guess Seattle did win the Super Bowl. Like, remember how you felt when they won the Super Bowl? So they need that. They definitely need that. But to your point, it's like the pressure is on everybody. And if Rob Brzezinski stays on as the general manager, now I'm not saying that he was responsible for the quarterback position, but if you're keeping the whole thing kind of together, well, everybody in the front office was there for that too. So everyone has a lot of pressure to win this year. Joker, am I missing something? Do we either have to trade Grenard or extend him? Couldn't we have just done nothing? Even if he held out of training camp, he still would have played for us. Yeah, you're correct. Eventually he would have had to play, and Kevin O'Connell would have been answering questions every single day about Jonathan Grenard. No, there was no, do you have to do X or Y? I think what that came down to, and keep in mind, like, I didn't love the idea because I really think that Jonathan Grenard's a great football player. I really believe in pressures telling a better story than sacks. He was still top 20 in pass rush win rate. I think what it came down to was just an straight up economics decision, which is if you move on from Jonathan Grenard, then you get a lot back, a lot of cap space over the next 2 years, 2 draft picks that are in the top 100, which this team has been terribly, terribly missing in recent years, and the added benefit of Dallas Turner getting a path to play the position he's supposed to play. I mean, if you spend as much as you did on Dallas Turner in the draft, and he's still sitting behind 2 other guys in year 3, that's not great for you. If you believe in him, that's not great for you because the rookie contract does not just apply to the quarterback. If you have an edge rusher who gets double-digit sacks on a rookie contract, you are saving $30 million over what you have to pay that guy, or $20 million over what you have to pay that guy when he gets expensive. So they've slowly developed Dallas Turner the way they didn't slowly develop JJ McCarthy, and now it's time. I think that was a big part of it. And look, Grenard has had injuries over the years. He's pushing 30. He plays through a lot of stuff. I see why. I don't love, but I think that you can see why when you get a Juwan Jennings signing, for one. Like, there you go. There's one player who already you wouldn't have if you just kept him on his normal contract. And I think that was part of it too, is what Rob Brzezinski, if we start to kind of bring in everything and put it all together from what we've heard, when Brzezinski said he wanted to keep the powder dry, meaning not spend money they didn't have to sign free agents early in free agency, I think we saw that come together with Juwan Jennings here, and we might see even more of that. So if you end up with Juwan Jennings, another free agent, let's just say Leonard Floyd for the heck of it, Juwan Jennings, Leonard Floyd, a couple of veterans, a couple of top 100 draft picks, and Dallas Turner getting his opportunity, it outweighs just having Jonathan Grenard. But Would I rather have seen him still on the team? Yeah. Yes, I think so. But that's a lot to get back in return. That goes beyond just 2 third-round draft picks. It's $34 million in cap space over 2 years. Mr. Mayor, QB killer is easy when it's Will Levis and you have a quarterback under contract who won 13 games the previous year. It's different when you don't have anyone except for an unproven Darnold. I'm not sure I'm connecting the dots there and what we're talking about. Talking about last year. Son of Beavers, Murray has to show up if it is indeed a battle for QB1. Yeah, I mean, he's got to, not only does he have to be there for the non-mandatory parts, but also it has to look the part for sure. It's just that when I have watched him and talked to people in Arizona, it just doesn't seem like there is any chance he doesn't look like the part in Minnesota, because the guy is very, very accurate throwing the football. So in a 7-on-7 scenario, and we're talking about someone who won the Heisman, who was the best Texas football player, who's a top 10 most accurate quarterback since 2020. Like, the guy knows how to throw a football, even if there are times in real games where he's frustrated his coaches by turning down certain throws for scrambles, or has tried to do too much and, makes a mistake, a turnover, whatever it might be. The accuracy is something that has been pretty darn consistent with Kyler Murray over the years. So I expect that he shows up. If it's anything less than that in these 7-on-7s and, these unpadded practices, you would be like, what? Because even Sam Darnold and definitely someone like Kirk Cousins or Sam Bradford, they all had no issue whatsoever as veteran players coming into these 7-on-7 OTA minicamp type camps and just looking great. So I expect that, to be the case. Norris Force says Addison and Murray have been working together as well this offseason, which every sign, and Blake Cashman the other day talked about this. Cashman was on with Jim Rome, and he talked about Kyler going to a wild game with them and that he's been getting to know his teammates, and he put out on his Instagram his workouts and everything. I mean, Kyler is checking every single box of what you'd expect from someone who's preparing to be QB1 and preparing to change a narrative. I think that when you think about when these things came from with Kyler, it's really pretty far in the past when it comes to, well, is he going to work as hard, or was giving him all the money the wrong thing to do, or whatever it might be. That stuff went away with Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing as his coaches. It seemed to exist a lot with Cliff Kingsbury, who I'll tell you, going back a few months now, when I talked to Alex Clancy after they just signed. Alex Clancy's a podcaster who covers Arizona. I mean, he said that, Cliff Kingsbury was a glorified gym teacher, was the exact way he described it. So not somebody who was really coaching Kyler the way that he maybe needed to be coached early in his career. It reminds me of what happened with Caleb Williams, where Caleb Williams gets, well, maybe we're going to do that. Tyler Dunn piece was really revealing. Maybe we're going to do half of his college offense and half of an NFL offense. You're like, what? You can't do that at this level. So when they ran a real offense and he connected well with Jonathan Gannon, and Josh Weinfuss of ESPN told me that they would go to each other's houses and watch film together and everything else. I mean, it just seems like this is an adult Kyler Murray who understands what's happening here. So I expect him to be there, but I expect him to be very ready to do this as well and on point with the receivers from day one. Mr. Mayor, we could have kept Jonathan Grenard. I think they felt the cap space and draft capital was better than risking him refusing to play. He would have had to play eventually to get his game checks, but here's what ends up happening sometimes is when a player is not happy with their contract situation, that hamstring, right? Like, I'm not too happy and, it's a little raw this Sunday. I think I'm not going to play. And I'm not saying Grenard would have done that, but if he didn't show up at any point through all of training camp, I'm not saying fake injuries, but you can say you're not going to play through injuries. And the other thing that is that you have a better chance of getting injured. If you don't participate in all of training camp, the I mean, this is like the Darrelle Revis thing from many years ago, but he came, if you remember, Revis had this big fight with the Jets. He came out in like the first week and pulled a hamstring. I mean, if you're not getting into shape, your risk of injury is higher. So, I mean, you would be talking about distraction is tough because it's not like he's doing it on purpose, but it would be a constant conversation throughout training camp of, is he going to show up? Is he not going to show up? And you know he's going to show up ready, as in physically ready, but is he going to be able to be on the field? Is he going to be at 100% to start the season? Or is he not going to be in the same shape that he would be if he went through, an exhaustive training camp like everybody else? There's just all those little things that you kind of factor in and go, well, what about $34 million in cap space and 2 third-round picks? Like, okay, I'm defending it even if I don't love it, but I do want to see, this is the big thing is I do want to see what Dallas Turner can do in that role, where he could play every single game. And I think Turner is kind of, and maybe this is the wrong name to use, but so far in his career, sort of Yannick Ngakoue-ish, where, man, the guy's flashes would be crazy, but then on a down-to-down basis, you need more consistency. How are we supposed to know if he can be consistent if he's got to play Van Ginkel's role this week, rotate in that week, play Grenard's role the next week? Like, just give him a job and let him play and see what happens. Is this somebody that you want to talk extension with next year or not? That's what you need to get a sense for this season. Can he really handle being that guy, or is he just okay and you need somebody else? That's going to be a question they have to answer. Digital Plains Media, which is more likely to be a Viking in 2027, Addison or Murray? Addison will be a Viking, I think. I don't want to say guaranteed, because you never know what happens after 2 a.m. or whatever, but I mean, Addison is much, much higher because on his they at least have his 5th-year option for 2027. So you could trade him on his 5th-year option to someone else. George Pickens was not a first-round draft pick, so he didn't have a 5th-round option, but it was the same sort of deal where he was going into the last year of his contract. So Pittsburgh traded him away. They were done with George Pickens. We're going to give you to the Dallas Cowboys. And the Vikings could do that with Addison if they're tired of him. If he underperforms and they're concerned about off-field stuff impacting his on-field performance, absolutely. Or if there's other off-field issues and they just say, I've had enough, we can find another wide receiver too. Okay, let's move on. We'll draft someone else. That could happen. But I mean, KOC's love for Addison is high. And I also think that Addison and Murray are going to play well together. This is a route running freak. This is someone who can make contested catches. This is the type of quarterback who can throw it accurately enough to where it's like walking up and handing it to you. So I think that Addison should thrive in this environment. If he doesn't, then that question is still there. Murray is a total coin flip. I mean, if we're doing right now percentage chance, and this is something we should keep going back to constantly, and maybe I'll ask like every guest to get their take. But if we're doing this, like, what's the percentage chance Kyler Murray is the Vikings quarterback in 2027? I got it at 50-50 right now. I could completely see it. And I will see where that meter goes, because I could totally see it. It's not even hard to envision. The guy was actually better than Arizona and their bum franchise. And he clicks with Jefferson. He clicks with KOC. He becomes a leader all of a sudden. And wow, they're in the playoffs with 12 wins. That did not sound unreasonable coming out of my face. But if you told me that he got banged up and he was erratic and kind of frustrating and maybe didn't really take responsibility when things went wrong and they finish 8-9 and okay, thanks for the memories, but that's going to be like, that wouldn't shock me either based on his history. Norris Force, if Kyler looks good, strong possibility McCarthy is traded before the season. I don't know if you want to do that. I mean, Carson Wentz is a fine backup quarterback, but Carson Wentz played 5 games and left in a sling. I mean, like, what are we talking about? KOC, I think, wants to have 3 quarterbacks who he knows can play. I don't think he wants to put out another undrafted free agent or Max Brosmer or Jaron Hall or anybody else like that. If you were going to trade him and then pick up another veteran, maybe you would do that. But even then, like JJ McCarthy, at very least, mostly knows your offense. You kind of know the things that he does well, the things that he doesn't do well. it would have to be a very miserable situation. But even if it is, look at Indianapolis and Anthony Richardson. That is a miserable situation. And Richardson is just on the team because you're under contract. There's nothing you can do. So even if he loses the QB2 job, which would be pretty bleak, I still don't see it because if he loses a quarterback competition to Carson Wentz, who's making that trade? Probably nobody. And that's where Indianapolis is. That's why it's on McCarthy to prove he could be QB2. And then if he does, then, well, yeah, you're not trading him because you need to leave the door open that he could still be your guy. It's such a volatile position that there have been a lot of quarterbacks through history where you're just not really sure until X number of games. And then you go, okay, I think this guy can play. It's not always evident right away in the NFL. So I think they need to slow play as much as possible rather than it would only be the case if he was a distraction. If JJ McCarthy, which I don't think is going to happen, if he was going on social media and posting, trade me, if he was, you remember people of a certain age will remember in Seinfeld where he ran on the field, George Costanza in the bodysuit, or he dragged the Yankees trophies around the parking lot. If that was what JJ McCarthy was doing, then maybe you're trading him. I think otherwise you just want to ride this out and see where you're at. Mr. Mayor, probably Addison, answering that question about which one is more likely to be here, because if Murray's on the team in 27, Addison is absolutely on the team also. Yeah. Murray being there means that they are competing, and Addison would be on his 5th year option, right? And the 5th year option is just not that expensive. It really isn't. It's like, is it 18 million, I think, or somewhere in that ballpark, 17, 18 million, which is not too bad for a number 2 wide receiver for a 1-year contract. Joker, we saw immaculate vibes to end the season, but Sam Darnold hadn't won the Super Bowl yet. Isn't that going to be back of everyone's mind every day this season? It's unprecedented negative aura. I have trouble believing that a team with these guys is going to wear that. Now, if it starts to go badly early in the season, that yes. But when we talk about like getting into the mix here and being back every day for practice, these guys move on from everything. It's like, I remember with Brian O'Neill, just specifically, that guy was so emotional when Kirk Cousins got hurt. And he wanted Kirk back, and that was his guy. And this is my quarterback and everything. And then they moved on to Sam Darnold, and he said, well, that's business. And he blocked for Sam Darnold, and that was his guy. Like they're trained to do that. Like that's what the pros do. They move on. So that was last year. This is this year. That's all you're going to hear. If anyone asks like, hey, you guys like still thinking about Darnold winning the Super Bowl? It's going to be like, what? When? Huh? Years ago. When was that? That's just how they are. They have to focus on what's ahead of them. But I think if you start getting into the season, and let's say Sam Darnold's really good again in Seattle, and you have, Kyler's struggling, McCarthy has to go in, it doesn't go well, and then it's going to feel like, it's slipping on KOC. It will. If that's what happens, then we will go back to, if you only had Sam Darnold, you should have kept Sam Darnold. And because that's how, we're going to think about it, is that's the guy that you ended up letting go. I was laughing the other day when I saw people talking about quarterback rankings. Just can't wait for that quarterback ranking season and where Sam Darnold's going to rank. I'm like, what does the guy have to do to get a top quarterback ranking after winning 14 games and then the Super Bowl and playing great in both seasons? I don't know. Can't wait for him to be 17th on everybody's list again. Just keep pumping Justin Herbert until the wheels fall off. Son of Beavers, do you think they will add any depth at edge after June 1st? Yes, I do. There's at least 4 or 5 players out there with experience in a 3-4 type of system that I think could be reasonable backups. I believe Jihad Ward's even out there. I don't know what that relationship was like with Brian Flores or the locker room when Jihad Ward was here, but he was effective in 2024 playing in a certain type of role. I mentioned Floyd. I mentioned Kyle Van Noy. There's a couple more. I think that's one of the main things they need to acquire. I just don't think you can go into this with Bo Richter, Chaz Chambliss. I liked what I saw from Tyler Batty last year. Tyler Batty looks like a guy who could be a rotational defensive lineman, but I mean, you don't want one person to go down and then they have to start. And I wouldn't want to ask that of Jake Golday either. Even if Andrew Van Ginkel goes down, you don't want Golday to do that. The one thing I do wonder about outside linebacker is Eric Wilson last year actually played a lot of outside linebacker, like a surprising amount of outside linebacker at times last year, rotating over to that side, lining up at that position, even if so it looked like there was only one linebacker, but he would be at outside linebacker. Do they view, I mean, Eric is only like 220 pounds. But do they view him to 230 as somebody who can just play that position if they needed to for a full game? I would not be in favor of that. But if you play a 3-4, it's just different. It's very different than what we think of as your, outside or like edge rusher. But Wilson is not really fit to rush against tackles time and time again. It's much more like stunts and stuff. You can't do that for whole games. So I think that they will be hunting and will try to track down and sign an outside linebacker. But it might be now, or it might be through training camp or on cutdown day. It doesn't necessarily have to be right now. Do you think that any of our backs has a chance to break 1,000 yards rushing? I mean, I think Jordan Mason, it's easy to forget that Jordan Mason averaged 4.8 yards per carry last year. I mean, overall, Jordan Mason brought you exactly what you were hoping for last season. I thought they didn't utilize him at all in the passing game, which it's not like he's Mr. Hands, but he's not Larry Centers out there, or Tony Richardson or Amp Lee. But, he can catch the ball at least on screens or something to get him moving in the pass game a little more. And maybe they could figure out ways to keep him on the field in passing downs, because that was kind of the issue. But as far as an actual runner, I could see it. I think they want to dial back Aaron Jones. But in an ideal world, maybe you end up with like 875 for Jordan Mason, 500 yards from Aaron Jones, and 250 from Damon Claiborne, and a handful from Xavier Scott. And that's what you got. But I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of looked at that free agent market and said, is there a guy we could bring in for $1 million? I mean, Rashad White was the one I was like, man, are you sure you don't want to bring in Rashad White? I think he got paid $2 million. So whoever's still out there, they're not going to get a big contract. Is it worth it bringing just one more veteran in? Quick reminder that FanDuel question of the day is confidence level. So the Vikings bumped up a little bit from plus 600 to plus 500 on FanDuel. Confidence level that they won't be last. Where is your confidence level in that? I think which is telling just about maybe how volatile you think this thing is going to be. Purple Kool-Aid Bobby Wagner is out there. Maybe at some point he'll accept a rotational role. I don't know. I don't know what Bobby Wagner is thinking. I think if I'm Bobby Wagner, I'm probably like, hey, I want to play. Like, I want to be the guy still. I don't know if that's still in there with Bobby Wagner, but maybe. I mean, there's random veterans who have shown up in Minnesota over the years that you never see coming. So that would be a little surprise. I wonder if Wagner is in a situation, and I don't want to say that this is what Harrison Smith is doing, but it kind of feels a little like it. Like, is Wagner in a spot where I'll just wait and see what happens? Where Wagner could say, I'll wait till a team gets a linebacker injured in week 8, and then I'll go play the rest of the season, rather than having to go through the training camp and everything else. He might do that, or might latch on with the team right before training camp. We'll see. Joker says, I know how we can win the Super Bowl, but I need Purple Insider's help. You have to ask the new GM and the Vikings brass questions that include the quote, Kwesi said never go full Rams. That's funny. Yeah. That's, with Kwesi, he had a few of those that I don't think it helped his case very much. When we look at what is the sort of era defined by, it'll be memorable quotes like competitive rebuild, never go full Rams, whatever it was he said about Kirk Cousins. At the end of the day, with the moves that were made under Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, regardless of whether they believed in him for the future or whether the Wilfs liked the way that the front office was being run by him, they have put themselves in a position to win 14 games and still, even after last year, have a 9-win season that was a calamity. And then here we are with them going into a season once again, where I think all of us could see how this roster could come together and make it work. So roster wise, it was far from disastrous with him at the helm. I think it was a lot of other stuff that was more projecting into the future. And also with Kwesi, I think when he was at the podium, there was always a desire from him to have everyone understand what he thought. And what you have to realize, and I never had a chance to say this to him because I'm not going to like tell him how to do his press conferences, but had he asked, I probably would have said, you don't really have to answer the questions directly if you don't want to. And so you don't have to have us understand. I think it actually mattered to him that the people in the room and the fans understood where he was coming from and the thought processes and things like that, which would sometimes come out in a jumbled way. Like it wasn't always crystal clear and sometimes would result in quotes that you were like, probably shouldn't have revealed that. The one with Jordan Addison where he said, hey, 99% of the time he's great, but that other 1% of the time you're like, that is not what you should say. Like I love that quote as a journalist, but as if you were advising him, you'd be like, dude, that's not the line. That's not the line. You should say, we're going to keep that internal. We're not going to talk about that in the public. We're going to deal with it behind the scenes. And thanks for your interest. That's kind of how, but I really believe the reason was that he wanted everybody to understand where they were coming from. The Aaron Rodgers press conference was that way too. Where you're like, you don't have to answer. You are not on the witness stand. You don't have to answer all the questions with the whole truth and nothing but the truth, man. It's good for us, but you don't have to do that. And I think there were probably times where other people in the front office were like, why'd you say that? Why did you tell everyone everything that we did? So anyway, that's just going back to the never go full Rams. That'll be part of how we remember Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is one, that they built a 14-win team, but then the other is that they let a quarterback go, failed to have another plan for the quarterback situation, decided to actually go full Rams with that offseason, had it blow up in their face in a lot of ways, and that was that. So they really needed to take a more methodical approach. And that's what you want to see from the next GM. Like, learn from the last guy that, okay, Mike Zimmer once said, rancher Mike Zimmer once said, don't get too high on your oats, which is a horse term. And I think the Vikings got so freaking high on their oats after 2024 that they were arrogant enough to believe that they could just coach anyone to be a great quarterback. And I also think that they thought, well, we are so good that a lot of the rules of this game don't apply to us about overspending and about asset management and building through the draft. Like we're better than the rules. Like these are the things that have been sort of proven not to work, and we're going to do them. And it blew up in their face. So, which was an interesting offseason to cover because it was like, yeah, this is exciting to see a team really push all the chips to the middle of the table, but are these the right players to spend the dollars on? And it's very risky. And when you push all the chips to the middle of the table and it comes up not your number, you end up back in San Francisco. So something for the next general manager to keep in mind. Purple Kool-Aid says Snead or Kenny Moore in our secondary. Yeah, I mean, Kenny Moore is a veteran slot guy. Depends on kind of, sometimes we've seen this, that Brian Flores will just really like somebody and we're kind of like, oh yeah, like Isaiah Rodgers, he was a backup for the Eagles. Sure. Right. And then the guy starts and plays 1,000 snaps. Eric Wilson. Yeah. We love Eric Wilson. Yeah. He's a good special teamer, great leader. Yeah. Everybody likes Eric Wilson. And then he plays like 700 snaps and gets 37 pressures. And you're like, okay, that might be James Pierre. They might view James Pierre as being that guy that they've identified on another team that they want a much bigger role. But Kenny Moore is a proven veteran who could play in the nickel. That would be good for them to give him a little more versatility. Purple Kool-Aid, Chad Beebe never did a thing. Not true. But if you listen to the reporter hype, you would have thought he was a 6-year starter. Not true. He had a big catch against Green Bay in 2019, right? game at Lambeau where the Vikings got down 20 points. He had a big play in that game. Not true that he never did anything. I think a 4th down conversion was his first catch, a little out route. I forget who it was against. So he had some plays. One of the reasons that someone like Chad Beebe gets talked about like that is, number one, an underdog story is always great. Football would not be what it is without underdog stories. So Chad Beebe was a great one. The other thing is, I think the guy could actually play. I think he was actually an NFL caliber wide receiver. He just could not stay healthy. And he had some bad luck. There was one, I think he was blocked. Someone was blocked into him or something against the Raiders where he got hurt. That's going to take its toll. And the other thing is that when you have a Diggs and Thielen, we already knew that those guys were great. And so we were always looking for who's the next Jarius Wright, who's the next wide receiver 3. It was like in training camp, especially Diggs would be doing stuff out there that was just disgusting. I mean, he was like mossing people, running by people. I mean, at his best in his career, he's one of the best wide receivers in the entire NFL. But we already knew that. He had already done the Minneapolis Miracle thing. So it's like, okay, yeah, well, he just caught a 50-yard pass from Kirk Cousins in practice. Okay, whatever. What's Chad Beebe doing? Because that's like the thing we don't know is always more interesting to talk about than the thing we're already pretty settled on. If I come and recap every practice with, dude, can you believe how good the best players are? It's not really great content, right? Is that height? I'm just going to go with height. Or, high times. High times. Okay. What's up with all the recent DL signings, defensive line signings? Rolling the dice on a few veteran players who might be able to be depth for them. Because like Isaiah Loudermilk and Eric Johnson are two little bit different guys. But both of them fit the profile of how this team wants to play. I mean, Loudermilk is a 3-4 defensive end. He is 6'7", 300 pounds, and he's kind of like your Caleb Banks lookalike. So you want someone who could be a backup there. What I think is that they want to have a very open competition in that room. Like just everybody's going to have to kind of prove their worth. What you want is Caleb Banks starting day one, 3-4 defensive end, 3 tech to 4 eye if you want to get super serious. And use that space and blast forward and play 30 plays a game. Like that's what you're looking for from Caleb Banks. But if it doesn't happen right away or his recovery is slowed at all, you want somebody else who's played football in the NFL before. And Johnson's kind of a thicker guy who was supposed to have some pass rush ability, didn't really get there. It's been a little bit of a development project for the Indianapolis Colts, just kind of didn't work out. So I think they're looking for your Jonathan Bullard types where if things go wrong on the D-line, this guy can definitely play football. But is he going to be a star? Is he going to move the needle? No. But they need veteran depth because they have nothing but youth there. Even like Taki Taimani has barely ever played. And Ty Ingram Dawkins has barely ever played. Do they see Tyler Batty as a 3-4 defensive end? But still, not much work. So they needed guys who have actually been on an NFL field before. And if they lose their jobs in training camp, that's probably a good thing. If they cut these guys, then they're good with what they have. But if not, they need to put some guys in the practice squad and have NFL players who have been in the league before actually play. Joker says, when, how, and what do we go full Rams can be fluid, but ideally something like trade for talent around the deadline, 2027 draft, bleep them picks, do every restructure and extension to get cap space. It really depends on what's happening. So to your point, considering how up in the air the future is, if you got to the deadline and you are 7-1, deadline's week 9 now, right? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. You're 7-1. Oh boy. Like this team is really freaking good. And there is a player on the trade block that is I don't know. I don't want to say Myles Garrett, but let's just say Myles Garrett for the heck of it. Myles Garrett is on the trade block and you are 7-1. Kyler Murray's in the MVP race. Brian Flores' defense is coming along. Caleb Banks has been a freaking beast. Everyone's healthy. You're feeling great. Would you do something crazy at that point? Maybe you would at that point. because this is the end of the road in terms of the age of a lot of these players. You're looking for a refresh into the future. I mean, the Myles Garrett thing, like, don't get into details. Just like think of big player name X. Maybe it's Max Crosby trade as the Raiders are still a stumbling franchise. Whatever. It doesn't matter. I think that you get involved there. Yeah. And I thought this in 2024 too. Like, maybe you get involved in a big trade here because who knows how many opportunities you get to take this swing. So, look, if Rob Brzezinski is the GM, they might be a little more cautious to do something like that. But I also think that you can look at the roster and evaluate it and go, man, you have O'Neal only so many years and Cashman and Byron Murphy is expensive and Aaron Jones. And if all these guys are playing kind of peak, they're playing really, really well in the middle of the season. Let's say that the NFC North isn't as strong as we think it's going to be. Like, there is a scenario there where you would do something like that. I don't think it's their main idea, but you also do have to take every chance you can to win when you get those opportunities. So yeah, like there's a situation. It's kind of narrow, but there's a scenario that's definitely there. Otherwise, you're probably going to get to a trade deadline and look around and go, well, what can we get for, a fourth rounder or something? Can you bring in a role player? Can you bring in someone whose contract is expiring and shore up a weakness, that kind of thing? Then maybe you consider doing it. If you're 6-2, if you're 5-3, maybe, to make sure you get over the edge to the playoffs. But I really think it's only the scenario where you are absolutely crushing it. Kyler is totally dominating. Your team is fantastic. You're Super Bowl favorites at that point. Then you make a move like that. Then you go full Rams. Yeah. Tyson, how do you feel about a Jalen Hurts comp upside for JJ McCarthy? Both seen as winners who are limited passing and struggle with passes over the middle while having good athletic profile. I'm not sure that I really see it. I see what you're getting at. Like that Jalen Hurts does have some limitations as a passer, but overall, I mean, last year didn't have a good season as a passer. He has been at times in his career a good passer. The thing about Jalen Hurts, though, is that he came out of college as a prolific running quarterback, not just hey, he can scramble when it's called upon. And that raises your floor wildly in the NFL. And he's so much more than the tush pushes when he's at his best. His deep passing has also been fantastic throughout his career. That's really helped him. You mentioned not throwing to the middle, but the sideline stuff, the deep throws to Devontae Smith, to AJ Brown have been nothing short of great. I could see, though, what you're saying along a similar path of, well, he comes into the NFL, and if you look at Jalen Hurts' first year, as a passer, it's not that great. It's not great at all. And as a runner, it was really good, though. And that's the difference right there, is that as a runner, Hurts is so good early in his career that you're going to win games because of that and allow time to develop. But as a passer, could you get to a point where it's much more passable and then make some plays as a runner? Yeah. That the running part of it is so good for Hurts. It's a little bit hard to see. And I think Hurts has backed off a little bit of that as he's taken some injuries and he's got a Super Bowl ring and everything else. But earlier in his career, he was taking off and he was gaining a ton of yards. They were running a lot of designed runs with him. So it just makes, and this is the same for Kyler, where it does raise the floor of Kyler. If he's a good passer and not flawless, you can still win a lot of games because of his running, if you have a good defense and so forth. But I see what you're saying with the development path that Hurts took. He was not thought of as a great passer coming out. He still had a lot more experience coming out than McCarthy, though. Norse Force says, Teron Armstead podcast has an amazing interview with new Vikings assistant Frank Smith. Somebody pointed that out to me the other day, and I got to find it and give it a listen because multiple people have pointed that out to me. I think the Vikings didn't make a ton of moves, but it's probably their best move other than Kyler Murray is to hire Frank Smith, just to bring in somebody with new ideas for the run game, because that's what they've really been missing over the years. Purple Kool-Aid, the NFC North is hard because you can be an 8 or 9 win team and finish last like we saw last year. Right. Yeah. So that's That's why I think it's interesting, the FanDuel question of the day of like, what's your confidence level? The Vikings won't be last when they're plus 500. So they're moving closer to the other teams on the FanDuel lines, but it shouldn't be super high because you can have a good team and still finish last. Raiden says, when will you be able to gauge Demond Claiborne's pass blocking abilities? Camp, probably a little bit. I mean, it's hard to really know until they play in a game, but camp, you can at least see, did they get to the right person? Because they will block in camp. They're just not crushing each other like it would be in real games. But most of pass blocking for a running back is just getting to the right spot, seeing the right person. Does he have fast eyes when it comes to identifying which guy is rushing from where and then getting to the right spot? But he is not super heavy, which doesn't have to mean he's bad at pass blocking, but it's not easy to do. I also think that teams throw so much at these guys, at the Vikings specifically. They're trying to deal with Justin Jefferson, stunts, twists, stuff like that, simulated pressures, that it's a heavy load to carry on a running back when you're a rookie. But training camp will tell us a lot more. I mean, that was where you could really see the signs of, I don't know if Jordan Mason's really getting it, or Ty Chandler, what is happening? So yeah, I think camp, maybe a little bit here, but I don't know how many 11-on-11 blitzes we're going to see in minicamp. Might not be that many. Joker, maybe at some point we could get a punting expert. Sure, we should do that for the competition. Norse Force, you expecting rookies to start right away? Caleb Banks, Dominique Orange for sure. Golday, probably not. I think that's right. I mean, Max Bredesen start. Like, I don't know if he'll start the game first play, but he's going to play a lot. Those would be the guys that'll get the most snaps, I would assume, is Caleb Banks, Dominique Orange, and Max Bredesen, unless I'm missing someone. Well, we'll see. Actually, Jacoby Thomas, I mentioned that safety spot, and I really should have said Jacoby Thomas because a third-round pick could be in the mix to play. We've got Jay Ward and Theo Jackson. They've developed, and those guys are Jackson was drafted by another team, but they're former draft picks who have developed here in this defense. But if Jacoby Thomas gets it quickly, and I think you guys are really going to like Jacoby Thomas if it clicks for him. I've just been listening to some interviews by him and, doing some research, and very bright player. I could see why they clicked with him. Very driven, another one of these Anthony Harris, Josh Metellus, Jacoby Thomas, like these high IQ, aggressive type guys that just seem to click a lot. So he should be in that mix as well for a potential starter. Mama, very curious how Kyler will look in this offense. I'm interested to see of just like how much they want to adjust the offense. Like, do we see things that we haven't seen before? So do we see like pistol? We haven't really seen very much, if any, pistol formation. So do we see that kind of thing with Kyler? Do we see, he doesn't really do a lot of design runs these days. It's mostly almost all scrambling that his yards come from. Is there something with that, moving the pocket, moving him, knowing that he's got that kind of quickness? But I think you'd be really surprised. I think everyone would be really surprised because the Kyler Murray in your head is truly from 5 years ago. I mean, I would love to know the answer to this question. How many national TV games did the Arizona Cardinals have from 2023 to present? Is it 5? If we don't count Thursday Night Football, is it 2? I mean, they just have not been a relevant team. The whole group that got them to relevancy in 2021 just fell apart. They lose DeAndre Hopkins. They don't draft his replacement correctly. They tried, but they didn't. They have a couple inexperienced coaches and stuff like that. But in 2024 and early 2025, he played in an offense that's not that different from KOC's. When I was watching the All 22 back, and I did 2 different film pieces on the newsletter, purpleinsider.football. Make sure you check it out if you get a chance. 2 different film pieces that I did there. And I show a lot of this stuff. Like, this is something that KOC does. This is something that KOC does. Here's him running a bootleg under center off of a play action where he's rolling out like Kirk Cousins. They did that stuff. They put in a real offense for him and he was able to run it. So I don't think it's going to be crazy different from what it's been before. But yeah, I am too. I'm interested to see how the timing comes along. And a lot of it is based on throwing into windows. Is he going to believe in those windows? That was something Kirk took a while. Tyson, what overall, if you were Madden, would you give the rookies if they had to step in and play right away? So allow me to give a small rant, just a tiny little, because I've got the Madden games behind me here, the old Madden games. They used to grade players badly. They used to grade a rookie a 62. A 62 guy, you could play with him in the game. Now you won't even find a 62. That's like the worst free agent. They give everybody's a 75. Everybody, it's just, it bugs me because I think that they don't want to get called out on social media. Oh, why did you give me this bad Madden rating? And they don't want fans complaining. Oh, well, this guy doesn't deserve to be a 68, whatever. They used to give guys terrible grades. Anyway, not the point. So if we were doing the old grading system, the real Madden grading system, and not the everyone gets a trophy Madden grading system, which is existing now, I would probably go Caleb Banks, something like a 71 right off the bat. And remember, I'm saying the old scale where backups were like 50s and average starters were 75 and great players were 90s. And there was an actual difference. So I couldn't just put in anybody at any position and have the same result, which is what I can do now. Anyway, you struck a nerve, Tyson. Sorry. So in the old system, so I would say like a little bit below average, just because he's going to have to make gains. But in the game, as you know, players develop and develop and develop. So I would start off with a very high like speed rating for a defensive tackle. Strength would be like way up, but awareness, things like that would be down because he has to learn. He's got to come a long way. Dominique Orange would probably be like a 68. Same sort of deal where strength would be way up. I think awareness would be higher. Speed would be quite a ways down. Just like an average player at nose tackle, which I think could be really good for them. But as you're saying, as rookies, these are first days. Bredesen would be a 99, obviously, since he's a fullback. No, seriously though, I would give him benefit of the doubt, probably like a 75. Well, it's Golday is somebody that I might go in the upper 60s as well. Like every one of these guys coming in has to show that they can do it, where the skills are going to be good, but that awareness rating, we don't know how aware they're really going to be, how like locked into the NFL they're going to be. So I'd probably be in that ballpark for a lot of them. The one that would be interesting would be like Chuck Demings, where you'd give him like 90. That would be my kind of Madden player. Madden 04, 05, somebody who you get was 94 speed, and then you just develop him over a couple of years, and then he's an all-pro. That's a fun question. Thank you. Fair enough point from Purple Kool-Aid on Jacoby Brissett that he has to stand behind their offensive line for double-digit games. Yeah, it's not a great situation in Arizona overall. That could be pretty rough. Mama, hopefully 1,500 yards from Jefferson. If it's a lot less than that, then it's a problem. It needs to be in that ballpark. Ron's still in wait and see with the quarterback situation. Both have had their share of injuries. Yeah, that's right. I mean, that goes back to why you don't just say, guys, obviously Kyler's the starter. What? Did you see JJ last year? I mean, you don't want to do that because then at some point, you might have to play him. I mean, you want to talk about a team that handled something like that really well from a, like outside perspective was Carolina with Bryce Young, where even behind the scenes, there was a report from ESPN's reporter that they were getting phone calls that they were considering trading away Bryce Young. And yet that was never really out there when it happened. They didn't let that get out when it was actually going on. That was way after that it kind of came out that they were getting phone calls and considering trading him. And their coach, Dave Canales, in the media was always very complimentary and like patient and everything else. You never saw him say like, man, I'd rather play Andy Dalton. This guy's brutal. Like you never saw him crack like that. And I expect kind of this, we saw some cracks last year from KOC in the middle of the season, but I think at this time of year, I expect him to just toe the line and, we'll see what we see. That's why we're going to look for what does it actually look like on the practice field? Because, they, want to have a certain message, you got to practice the way you're going to practice with what your real plans are. So we'll see. Joker, at Purple Insider headquarters, there's one room that contains a single locked briefcase sitting on display. It contains the stopwatch purchased to measure the punt hang time. That's very clever of you. A lot of these, I'm just trusting you guys when I start reading your comment because you're good commenters, and I had no idea where that was going. But, you finished your comment by saying, I hope I need it soon. I hope I do too. I mean, you got to admit, Ryan Wright turned out to be pretty darn good. And free agency, I think we started the free agency show by saying, look, don't underappreciate that this guy was one of the best punters in the entire league last year. So if Brett Thorson can do it, then they need him to do it. And Johnny Hecker has only been okay in the last few years. Bitter Bruce, very optimistic about being well above 8.5 wins. Murray will be even better than Darnold. Mark it down in ink. Okay, well, Darnold was amazing. So I don't know that you have to put it that high as far as the bar goes, but if he was even here's what you want the difference to be with Darnold and Kyler Murray. What Darnold never got enough credit for was that they couldn't run the ball or pass protect. And he still put up the numbers that he put up and won the games they won. He won a game where David Questenberry was playing left tackle and threw for like 350 in that game. That was Chicago. I mean, Cam Robinson was very bad as a Minnesota Viking. They couldn't run the ball at all once he got here and Darisaw was out. And yet he had to carry the offense week after week after week after week after week in order to get them. I mean, think about that Arizona game. He struggled a little bit and they almost blew it in that game and probably should have lost if Jonathan Gannon had made a good decision, and he brings them back and wins the game. I mean, they couldn't really lean on the run game at all. It was the Sam Darnold show every week. And the defense in the second half of that season was not that great. It was good, but it wasn't at like top 5. It didn't carry them. It was only pretty good. I remember looking at this like DVOA or whatever it might have been, EPA. In the second half of that season, they were like 15th, which is still good, but it was the Sam Darnold show. This is what you do not want for Kyler Murray. You do not want Kyler Murray to have to be the whole show. Okay, so this is Kyler in the last, 3 years, Joker? Is this the stat in the last 3 years? This is the stat that I was looking for earlier, which is Kyler's 13-17 that must be the last 3 years, right? And then the Cardinals without him are 2-19. So that's like a 40% winning percentage versus 10%. Yeah. So, that tells a story. If this was like, think about San Francisco, where San Francisco has had a couple of different quarterbacks who were flawed and good, and they won all the time. Anyone else playing for the Cardinals has turned into what? The worst quarterback in the NFL? I mean, Jacoby Brissett. Oh man, well, Brissett played better within the offense. He won one game. I don't care if he played better within the offense. Great. His checkdowns were marvelous. But I think that stat is as telling about Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals as anything I've ever heard. 13-17, not a great record. It's a little below 500, not good. Versus 2-19 anytime he's out with the same exact team. And look, Jacoby Brissett is a legitimate backup quarterback. So it's not like they were playing, Max Hall and John Skelton. I mean, this is like real guys. And that was their record. Yeah. Yikes. Tyler says, I personally see JJ winning the job is the absolute best case scenario long-term. Jefferson has had 9 quarterbacks. Yeah. There's part of me that wants to say maybe not, because if he wins the job, that means something went really wrong with Kyler, probably. I think the best case scenario is that Kyler is just awesome and you keep him for a while and then you're trying to win every year and you know who your quarterback is. I think that's probably the best case scenario. With McCarthy, if he wins it and Kyler was really good and he just somehow played better, okay, I guess I see where you're coming from. But there's also this thing about players who haven't played that much, who are draft picks, where we always assume that their upside is just higher than everyone else who's actually in the NFL. I mean, this is a thing that happens because of our obsession with the draft, is that we always just assume if someone is young, their upside is just ridiculous, that they could just be a big, mega, super freak star. I mean, if your struggle is consistency and accuracy and you couldn't really get the offense down and you're erratic and everything else, and you don't have freakish skill. He is not a freakish runner. He is not a freakish thrower in any way. He's not exceptionally big. Is the ceiling really higher than it would be if Kyler Murray just worked out? Like, I don't think so. I think the ceiling is higher if Kyler works out than it is if, Kyler were to really struggle and be terrible and JJ wins the job. Because I think that Kyler would have to be real bad. I mean, I think he would have to not get it and be frustrating, and if he was healthy. But really the answer is he's got to get hurt in order to probably not win this job. So that's the thing. I don't mean to be, terribly down on it, but once you've seen there is a reality of once you've seen those first 10 games, you can't unsee it. You can't just go no, his upside is incredible. It's well, there's not a lot of history to back that up because, and you can do your own research if you like on this, but look up any quarterback not drafted in the top 5. So start with the top 10 through the second round to just give you a bigger sample size. And the first 10 games they played, try to find anybody who played like this that then just flipped the switch and became a really good quarterback. You're not going to find too many. Because I did this. I looked through the numbers of the last, it was 15 years. And if someone played at this level, there were guys who became quarterbacks still, starters, but there was nobody who just, all of a sudden I'm great. That was not a top 5 pick. That was not like a Sam Darnold, for example. So I wonder about the magical upside that we just sort of assume with every, and I've made fun of the Cardinals and everybody, the draft analysts, for doing this with Marvin Harrison, where it's this upside is insane. It's I don't know, he can't separate, and maybe we could have some question about the guy. I don't know. Very opposite side of this is Mr. Big 999. McCarthy is a bust. Not sure what all the fussing is about. Murray will be the starter this year, and if he works out, likely sign him to a long-term deal. So everything you said outside of he's a bust is I'm good with. Yep. But I just can't declare that after 10 games. I think we need a bigger sample size to be sure. It's funny if we're talking about think about quarterbacks that kind of looked like this in their first 10 games where there was some stuff to like. Brock Osweiler kind of came to mind for me as somebody who really wasn't that accurate, but kind of had something there. And I mean, there's just been a lot of quarterbacks that had kind of similar starts to their career, but knowing that throughout the NFL history, we've seen all sorts of stuff. I mean, just because I watched it not too long ago, that AMC documentary about the 49ers is in my mind. And Steve Young was insanely talented. One of the most talented quarterbacks, the running, the accuracy, but he didn't start out great. And it took a long time to get there. And even like a Geno Smith or a Ryan Tannehill, there's a lot of guys who have found a home throughout history or even turned it around within a certain franchise to become reasonably good starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So bust to me is too harsh. Someone brought up Alex Smith on the show. Might've been, who was it? Mike Renner maybe who brought him up. But like Alex Smith is a good example. No, Eric Edholm, I think. Like Alex Smith had a lot of the same issues as JJ McCarthy. He didn't have touch on the ball, didn't really know when to run, and he became a really good quarterback long-term. So saying he's a bust is just too premature for me on that. But the rest of it was totally fair. Like, yeah, I mean, JJ McCarthy is probably not going to be your starter this year based on what Kyler Murray has done in the past and the potential upside with him, with Jefferson and a completely new team. That stat is just crazy. 13-17 versus 2-19. That's how bad of a team he was playing with. Joker, year one, this is for Kyler Murray, or is this for McCarthy? Year one, prove he can run an offense. Year 2 and 3, fix the throwing mechanics. 3 through 5, get the required playing experience he needed after being majorly set back. Oh, okay, yeah. I think I see what you're saying. Was that how it was like supposed to go? But it didn't? Is that what you mean? Because that would have been great. I mean, or do you mean like year one starting last year? If year one is starting last year, yeah, I mean, he didn't prove he could run the offense or fix the throwing mechanics, but I mean, like if that's what you mean is like, that's what he would have needed. I totally agree. It just does not happen. Rach, I think some Vikings fans are still operating with the mindset that paying a quarterback who is less than elite is a death sentence, and that isn't the case anymore. It's a great point, and it's crazy how things change in all sports. Things change fast in every sport. And what did I count the other day? Was it 5 out of the 7 NFC playoff teams paid their quarterback? Was it, so not Caleb Williams, but I think it was almost everybody else had paid their quarterback, because the way I wrote a column about this, purpleinsider.football. I wrote a column about this. The NFC is a roster building arms race, because let's say you keep Kyler Murray. Most of the quarterbacks in the NFC, it's kind of a crazy thing, have at some point in their career been a top 10 quarterback. It's wild that if I remember correctly, we got 16 teams in the NFC, and I think 11 of them have a quarterback that by PFF had ranked in the top 10 at some point in their career. And it would have been 12. Murray was in that list. Murray's in that list because he was 8th in 2021 and he was 12th in 2024. So most of the NFC has quarterbacks that can get it done. It's just who's building the best group around them. This is why San Francisco has been so good for so long, is that they've just been able to put team, and they're the best coach, but that's another part of it. Can you win the arms race of roster building and coaching? Because most of the quarterbacks are pretty good. So can you be in that ballpark? Can you be with everybody else? The Kyler Murray at his best versus Jalen Hurts we mentioned earlier, or Brock Purdy, or Baker Mayfield. I mean, if you're just starting a team, you're probably taking Kyler Murray, right? Maybe Baker because his highs are high, but I don't know. Like, that's not, you don't put Kyler up against those other guys and go, no, he's not in that range. Like, of course he is. So if Murray works out, he gives you a chance to sign him to a reasonable contract. And then you got to build a little more through the draft. You got to have more hits. But as you said, the cap flexibility, how much the cap is going up these days, it is so different. The levers the teams pull. And the important thing is too, that Kirk signed the worst possible contracts for this team. They were short-term. They were guaranteed. They were an anchor. You couldn't do anything with it. You couldn't just go, why don't we restructure this thing? And why don't we, because we're in our winning window. It was like, nope, you can't do a whole heck of a lot with it unless you do an extension. That was hard to work around. So if Kyler is going to do the same thing, well, that could change the math a little bit. But just in general, you should have a chance to work around a contract. Purple Kool-Aid, I think the Wilfs knew what they were getting into when they had Rob Brzezinski fill in as interim GM. At the very least, they have a plan for him if he's not the GM. Yeah, I'm sure that was part of the conversation, right? I mean, Rob is just too important to be like, all right, you're not our GM and you don't work here anymore. Hope you enjoy the unemployment line. No, they're not going to do that. The one thing that you can absolutely say about the Wilfs is that, I mean, they do treat people very well. The players, executives, everybody. Some of you would probably say too well. They should have get rid of everybody. But there's somebody who's been as loyal as Rob. There's a plan there. I'm sure that was a conversation. If we don't stick with you at general manager, here's what we're going to do. Rach, I think Kyler has a higher ceiling than JJ, both in the short and long term. I don't agree with the idea that JJ winning would be better for the organization. I tend to agree with that because I just think of what's the talent level. When we're talking about a Heisman Trophy winner, first overall draft pick, who's a top 10 most accurate quarterback since 2020, who is capable of running from 500 to 700 yards. I mean, that's stuff that if you put in the right circumstances should be right in that conversation of top 10. And with McCarthy, you have to resolve a lot before you can get to even playing average football. you have to resolve the touch on the football. You have to resolve the issue of playing with timing. Like, these are all things that Kyler Murray has no problem with, right? And if he did early in his career, he was so physically gifted with his throwing and his playmaking and all that sort of stuff. I mean, yeah, I think the ceiling is higher with Kyler Murray than it is with JJ McCarthy. Norse, if Murray looks good and Wentz is a good backup, then showcase McCarthy in the preseason, then trade him. You really want to trade? You really want McCarthy out? I don't have to do that right now, so I probably am not going to. But if it might be something that he asks for. You have to give me another quarterback though if you're gonna do that. Like, you have to have another veteran. Is Joe Flacco available? You're gonna have to have another veteran, because I believe that they should have 3 quarterbacks. It feels crazy to say, well, just because what happened the last few years, but they did get down to their 3rd quarterback. And when Carson Wentz is your backup, you can't trust Carson Wentz. This is why you have to keep McCarthy. You can't trust Carson Wentz to play more than 4 games. With just that, from a health perspective, because he still thinks he's Carson Wentz from 2017. And I respect, as someone who was shooting hoops earlier today, and I'm still trying to do step back fadeaways that maybe 10 years ago I had a little more explosiveness. But Wentz still thinks he's like a baller when he gets out there. It's like how I was talking about how you could practice a lot and everything else, but sometimes things are hardwired. With Carson Wentz, being a baller is hardwired, and it got him hurt last year. So you can't really rely on that as a backup. I think you have to have 3. Joker, McCarthy could make decent improvement and still not be as good as Wentz, but if they're close, McCarthy is a little behind and McCarthy will be QB2. Probably true. Davis, when you say that Jefferson has best games with Wentz because Wentz knows his stuff, what do we mean by this specifically? Well, one, I would ask if you saw the games, and I'm not saying that like sarcastically, but like, did you see the games? Because when you watch what Carson Wentz was doing with Justin Jefferson, it's throwing on time. Think of the end of the Cleveland game, drop back, hit the back foot, let it go, accurate pass. Jefferson has to make, a jumping catch, but it's not anything crazy. There's numerous plays to Justin Jefferson with Carson Wentz. Like, if you have NFL all 22, just to answer this question, like, you can do this. If you can, like NFL plus, so you can watch the all 22, it allows you to put in like kind of prompts or whatever. So go look for like Justin Jefferson catches and look at the ones from Wentz. A lot of them are just timing plays, just flat out, just timing. So one specifically that comes to mind, I think it was against Pittsburgh. It's just an out route. He runs up, kind of fakes inside, breaks to the out. The ball is in the air already. He turns around, he catches it, first down, bang, keep going. That's what Sam Darnold was done with him. That's what Kirk Cousins did a million times with Justin Jefferson. It's what JJ McCarthy couldn't execute. That consistent, it was automatic with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson that if he got a isolation on somebody and was able to break off an out route or a dig route into some space, the ball is just going to be there for him. And Wentz was able to execute that over and over again. And I also mean, like, just go look at the numbers. It was clear that he was finding him much more, but the offense is built to highlight Justin Jefferson. He's one of the best players in the entire NFL. The whole thing is built around this centerpiece. And sometimes it's built as a decoy, but a lot of times it's not. It's built for other people to be decoys and moving pieces and moving parts to get him into space. But what you have to do as a quarterback is you have to execute those at the line of scrimmage first. That means motions. That means timing on motions, which was a problem for JJ McCarthy. So they have these timing motions where guys are coming across, and let's say you have like 2 wide receivers and you've got, all right, he's coming behind the line of scrimmage. It's got to be like, now ball comes out as you're getting to a certain spot so you could turn upfield going full speed. This is something Miami crushed it with Tyreek Hill. They kind of violated the rules a little bit where he would be really turning upfield, but this is something the Rams did great. The Vikings like to do it, but the timing would be off. So then I'm waiting. Okay, I'm slowing down. Now I'm a little too far outside, or now the pick isn't the natural pick is not going to work out, like things like that. Wentz just went in there and ran it and just got the ball to Jefferson. pretty seamlessly in a lot of cases. So that's like the canary in the coal mine for not knowing the offense. If somebody can't throw it on time to Justin Jefferson, then you don't run the Minnesota Vikings offense. That would be like if you played for the 49ers and couldn't find Jerry Rice on time. Like, it's all built around throwing to Jerry Rice. So, and it's all timing, and it's all based on, hitting the back foot at the right time, throwing into space, anticipation, all that stuff. Cause you can't just throw to Justin Jefferson. There will be two guys there. If you just drop back and wait till he's open and then, okay, I'm going to force it in there. You have to hit it at the right time to throw it to a spot where the defender doesn't know that's where he's going. That's why he's so good, because Jefferson is this is from Stephon Gilmore. He explained this to me. It was great. Gilmore explained to me that when Justin Jefferson is coming at you as a defensive back, he is so fast and never slows down really when he makes his breaks. Like, it's crazy how fast and deceptive he is. So he's coming at you with all this like freight train of speed, and then he will just break. Like, it isn't this slow down or chopping feet. It's just like turn. And if you watch it, it'll be in a long stride. That's what's really crazy, is a lot of guys will chop their feet and turn. It's just this like crazy long stride, and his body just, right? The ball's got to be there when he turns, because if he turns and the ball's not there and then he keeps running, well, that gives you recovery time as a defensive back or for somebody to help from the other side. See what I'm saying? So this is why Wentz would be more effective executing the timing of an offense and throwing to those spots where he's coming out of his break and the ball's getting to him than it would be if you're talking about waiting until he's open and then whipping it at him. And plus, if you wait and you're too late, then you have to throw it harder to get it into that window, and then it's very difficult to catch. Is that Chris? Yeah. We'll go with Chris. I see JJ being the best option going forward. We drafted him 10th. Have some damn patience. Everyone wants instant gratification. Well, so here's the thing. This is not about society. This is about a guy who played 10 games and was not good. It's about a guy who played 10 games and had the same quarterback rating through his first 10 games as Christian Ponder. And if you're going to tell me, I'm sure there were people like you who said, give Christian Ponder more time. Every quarterback who didn't work out as a young quarterback has always had this, where the fans are like, no, you're too impatient. But the first 10 games have been pretty predictive if you're not a top 5 draft pick. And the reason for that is, one, you're the most talented people in the top 5, but two, those teams suck. Like, if you're Jared Goff and you go to the 2016 Rams coached by Jeff Fisher, your team is terrible and you don't have much of a chance to succeed. The same thing for Bryce Young with that horrible Panthers team. Like, you don't have much of a chance. So usually those guys need a little longer. Cam Ward, oh my gosh. Like that, the Titans, just grotesque. Was that the Minnesota Vikings of 2025? I don't think so. With Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson all healthy the whole season? I don't think so. Oh, they had an lineman hurt. Well, so did everybody else. I mean, but he was not starting with an atrocious team. And yes, having patience is great if you're in the right position to have patience, but you are not. Look around this team. You just got Jawan Jennings. You have 3 wide receivers who in their career at some point have had 900 yards. I mean, right? Or 800 something. Let's just say 800 yards. You have a tight end who's been a Pro Bowler. You have 2 offensive tackles who have been Pro Bowlers. You have a coach who was coach of the year. You have a running back who averaged 4.5 to almost 5 yards per carry last year. And another guy who came back for his year 37 or whatever for Aaron Jones. I mean, you have a defensive coordinator who returned to this team to win. You didn't have some patience. Well, if you just stick with your young guy hoping and praying who didn't really show that he could do it, then you could end up in a situation where everybody else is doing their job and giving you a chance to win, and you're losing because your quarterback isn't good enough. That's the ultimate nightmare for an NFL franchise. So you have to have someone who has the potential to win right now. But no one's saying give up. When you're saying have some patience, did I ever say give up on JJ McCarthy? Did I ever say it's over? Did I say that he should play in NFL Europe? Like, I don't think I said that. Joker, you're really on one tonight with favorites for best shape of their life. Jay Ward, Blake Brandel, people don't really say that much. But Jay Ward, I'm intrigued by. I'm intrigued where Jay Ward's going to be at coming back. I thought he actually played quite well last year when he got his opportunity, and I wonder if they regretted playing Theo Jackson more early in the season because Jay Ward's a better downhill tackler. So coming from the second level down, but I should have mentioned Jacoby Thomas the first time I talked about it because I'm interested to see if he has a real chance. We won't necessarily see that in OTAs, but if he shows something to them in OTAs and minicamp, we saw Brian Flores go with Ivan Pace as a rookie over Brian Asamoah. Could he go with Jacoby Thomas over, some of these veteran players or veteran-ish? Joker, they said they weren't going to overdraft and then they picked Caleb Banks. Yeah, I changed my mind on that though, Joker, because when I asked Benjamin Robinson of Grinding the Mocks, who does the absolute best draft stuff in terms of where guys are projected and their ups and downs of the mock draft universe and big boards and stuff like that. Ben is the best. He's been doing it for a long time. He came on the show before the draft. It's fascinating stuff. And he sent to me, because I messaged him and I said, hey, dude, where was Caleb Banks before the combine? And he was 23rd. So it really is only an overdraft if you don't believe them on the medicals, which is, if you want to have that opinion, like you're not crazy. They've sent guys back out there before and had them re-injure stuff and things like that. So, who knows, right? No one's perfect. But if you believe them on the medical stuff, that they did their research and that they know what metatarsals are going to metatarsal or whatever in the foot, then he's really more like a top 25 player who was drafted at 18. The reach thing was based so much on him getting hurt at the combine and having multiple injuries. But before that happened, he was in shape to be, or at least projected to be, I should say, in that same sort of ballpark where he was taken. Rach says, I think it's a major lesson of drafting McCarthy in 2024, that if you don't set yourself up come draft time with the glaring need at quarterback, they had to draft one in round one. Yeah, also, like, we shouldn't act like, they probably didn't love him that much. They might have. He was considered to be a very good first-round quarterback by a lot of people. Initially, before the combine, there were some who had him a little more toward the back end of the first round. You're always going to overdraft quarterbacks, or at least unless they're Andrew Luck, then you can't overdraft him. But if they're not the first overall pick, you're probably going to overdraft them a lot of times when they're not perfect. But I remember talking to people. So at that combine, 2024, I walked around bars and places in Indianapolis at 12 o'clock at night asking people, how do you feel about JJ McCarthy? And there was a wide range. Some people had him as like QB3 if they didn't really love Jaden Daniels or didn't really love Drake May or whatever. So there were a wide range of opinions, but we shouldn't act like, they probably knew, but they just had to panic. Yeah, you are right that yes, they were backed into a corner, but they also planned for that. They knew that draft class was going to be really good for quarterbacks, and they planned to take him that year. So do I agree with you that they should have been taking other quarterbacks? Maybe. The opportunities were a little few and far between, but like 2020 is certainly the one that stands out to me, where instead of extending Kirk, you can draft a quarterback. Maybe it's Jordan Love. Maybe it's Jalen Hurts. There's that. So, but I don't really look at it like, wow, they really bungled that. They knew going into that season. I think Kuiper had said, and I know every year they say he's a better quarterback class, but that one, Kuiper had said there could be like 6 or 7 in the first round, and there was 6, and it set the record. So they projected it correctly for what type of talent would be there. The mistake, if you're looking at what the mistake is winning the games they didn't need to win, where they could have been in perfect shape to draft in the top 3. Dirty Mike, 2024 peak was peak Vikings ineptitude, should have pivoted when Penix was picked. Well, look, this is all just so revisionist knowing the results. I mean, they really liked what they saw from JJ McCarthy in terms of his, his coachability, the system that he came from, the raw skills that he showed at the NFL Combine, certainly the personality and character fit with Kevin O'Connell. I really think that he was a perfectly fine first-round quarterback prospect who has not worked out so far. And yes, they had to draft him, but they also wanted to draft him. Yes, in hindsight, of course, what you're saying in hindsight, oh my God, in hindsight, yeah, take somebody else at number 11, the best player on the board, basically, whoever it is, and then, or number 11, and then don't trade down or don't trade up with Dallas Turner and have Sam Darnold and just assume that's going to work. Nobody knew how good Sam Darnold was going to be. We can hindsight that thing all day long, because imagine that. Or if they just stayed with their second round draft pick and didn't give up so much capital for Dallas Turner. If you knew that Sam Darnold was going to be a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, that's what you would have done. You wouldn't have drafted any of those guys. You might have traded with somebody to even drop back, get a bunch of draft capital, never trade up to get that second first round pick. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. But we don't know that at that time. Jay says, is KOC's job on the line? Does he have to win a playoff game or he's fired? Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think that the pressure is on for sure about winning a playoff game. And when O'Connell said, it was very honest when he said the timeline's changed. Why are they going to get veteran quarterback? The timeline's changed. Because if you had 5 years to develop McCarthy, then maybe you'd do it, but you don't. And he understands that. And the NFL is not kind to coaches that go 5 years without winning a playoff game. In fact, there are none currently in the NFL, unless I'm mistaken, cross-check me if you want to. But when I looked this up not too long ago, I believe I found none who have gone 5 years in a row without making the playoffs and currently have their job. If KOC, or not making the playoffs, but getting a playoff win. So it's that the NFL is not patient when it comes to that. At the same time, the amount of investment that's gone into O'Connell and Brian Flores, it would be surprising if they went to the playoffs at 10-7 and lost by, I don't know, a touchdown to somebody and then said, get out. Like that just wouldn't make a lot of sense. I think that when you find a certain caliber of coach that you want to ride that out and let that coach improve and build around that coach and his vision and have continuity, especially when your building is run in a really good way. If the wheels were to start to come off though, yeah, I mean, anybody in the NFL can go. I don't think it's smart business to constantly be changing the leader of your team. Build something and believe in it with your new GM and a process, to use one of their words, with your great defensive coordinator who, is like suing the league. And the next step to that is going to be wild if stuff comes out with the discovery process and 25 teams being subpoenaed. I mean, that thing's getting crazy. He's probably not going anywhere. He's probably going to be the defensive coordinator of the Vikings. So would you like that longer term as a good process? You know what your head coach can do as a floor. Can it improve? And then you know what your defensive coordinator can do. Now the onus is on your general manager to give him the best possible team and then see what happens. So I would not be of that mindset, but the Wilfs have made those changes before. Aaron, do I have a 53-man roster projection? Not yet. I don't. I do have something coming out on purpleinsider.football, looking at the biggest questions and kind of laying out the roster. I didn't do it by a 53. I just did it more of like, here are the players that are kind of in position to be on the roster. Maybe I should just cut it down to 53 and make it a 53 as well. We should just make 53s whenever. I am spinning. Give me a shout out, please. Well, there's your shout out. I am spinning. Thanks for watching, man. I appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it. I mean, having a fairly big audience tonight on Memorial Day, it's awesome. Dirty Mike, you are for a holiday that was really nice outside, maybe not in the best of moods here. The fact that this is Dirty Mike, the fact that we have to give Turner opportunity shows he's not the guy. I don't really understand the logic of what you're saying. I don't really know what you mean by that. It's not like they're giving him an opportunity of, well, hey, can you come into camp and show you can play? It's actually a good sign. They traded away a very good player because they believe that he's ready to play. But if he's not going to be a starter because you still have Jonathan Grenard, then you're kind of asking him to just be a fill-in and rotational player after you believe in him and traded that much for him. So I think it's a compliment to Dallas Turner. Shouldn't be looked at as a negative thing. And the draft capital, look, we're always going to go back to that. I get it, but it gets a little exhausting, honestly, to have to grade a player versus he didn't draft himself. He was the 17th or 18th overall draft pick. That is not number one overall. They didn't. And then there's this expectation for a mid first round pick that's going to need development. There's this expectation. Well, you better justify that draft capital right away. It's just not fair to the player. Like, it's fair to the front office. Yeah. Like, you need probably more production than you've gotten out of him if you're going to give that much. But if you also find a 10-year Minnesota Viking player, because this year he plays like Jonathan Grenard, well, then, you don't feel so bad about it. That's what it always comes down to with this stuff. When it's like the Heisman, I almost read the word Heisman because that's right there. The hindsight is what I was meaning to say. The hindsight thing is always like what makes football so interesting, but also frustrating. At the end of the day, you're judging the decision the front office made versus the production of the player. But already Dallas Turner has shown to be capable of playing in the NFL. And now you're going to find out, where does he fall on that spectrum of edge rushers? Does he fall on the spectrum of not, was he worth the draft capital? That is so gone and dead. It's like, that's too long ago. It's, do you want to make a decision on him? Do you want to exercise a 5th-year option? Do you want to franchise tag him? And we can, go back and forth on whether it was the right move or not. At the time when they made the trade up, yeah, they gave up a lot for him. And in 2 years, that has not been justified yet. That's not his whole career, though. So we have to see how it's going to play out. But I think it shows a lot of belief in him to say, yeah, we're okay. We're comfortable trading Jonathan Grenard in a year that we want to win. I think that shows a ton of belief in Dallas Turner. Punisher, did Winston win the Heisman too? I think at this stage of career, college accolades are more of a facade than value. I think you're kind of misconstruing what I was saying with bringing up the fact that he was a Heisman. When we look at what a player's pure talent is, it's the whole picture. It's about their complete picture of what their talent level is. So with Kyler Murray, the fact that he was the best high school player ever in Texas and the Heisman winner and came into the NFL and made multiple Pro Bowls and has been one of the most accurate quarterbacks. It's like, it's all just evidence that you're presenting that there's a ceiling there that's higher than someone who was a game manager in college and came in right away and played very poorly and didn't ever get talked about as having elite skills, right? So Kyler has been talked about as having elite skills since he was 16 years old, whereas JJ McCarthy has been much more along the lines when he's talked about as, well, he's got great character and he's a winner. And we've seen this stuff. We've seen some of the playmaking and so forth, but Kyler was accurate enough and threw with anticipation enough and had, playmaking ability that was through the roof to win a Heisman, to come in, win Offensive Rookie of the Year, go on to lead a team to the playoffs. Like, it's just part of the evidence. It's not the only evidence. I didn't say that every Heisman winner should just be a great NFL quarterback or something. It's when we're talking about ceiling, we're putting it all together. It's the whole bushel. So who has the higher ceiling? Well, to me, it's easily Kyler. He was drafted much higher at the number 1 overall pick. The team who drafted him just said, screw the last guy we drafted. I mean, all that stuff kind of plays into it. Like the speed that he has, the accuracy that he has, and he has a strong arm. I think his downfield passing has struggled with poor wide receivers, but he has a strong arm as well. But the touch and the accuracy and the playmaking, all that stuff, like the ceiling is higher there for a player with that background than it is for someone who is a later draft pick, a mid-round draft pick that didn't drive his offense's success. And it's hard to find one particular skill. If we Maddenize it, throw power, throw accuracy, like he throws the ball hard and it definitely has arm strength, but like in terms of playmaking, it's there, but it's not Cam Newton. It's not Kyler Murray. It's not Josh Allen, right? So where is the cheat code skills? You could find them with Kyler Murray a lot easier. So that's the point. Trey says, love our cornerback room. James Pierre, the 5th lowest passer rating of cornerbacks last season. I know I think he played like less than 400 snaps, but I think that they must see something they like there. Yeah, I agree with you. But, and Dirty Mike just woke up on the wrong side of Memorial Day today. Did you have to work today, Mike? Said, if you love our cornerback room, I have some beachfront property in Arizona for you. Dang, man. I think Isaiah Rodgers played really well last year, 2 years ago, Byron Murphy, and really Byron Murphy since he's been here, but maybe a little bit of a down season last year. And Pierre is somebody who I think could play, and then after that, we'll see. So would you like a little bit more depth there? Yeah, I think so. Maybe if there's one more player to add, but I don't think the cornerback room as it stands right now is bad. Purple Kool-Aid. I agree with this. You can't fault Dallas Turner for them moving up. Yeah, he didn't do that. Yeah, it wasn't his choice. And they also, I think, believed that they were going to have Andrew Van Ginkel. This is like the hindsight thing. I think they believed they were going to have Andrew Van Ginkel for like 2 years, and then that would be it, and Turner would take over that role. And then they had to pivot because they realized, well, he's not really an Andrew Van Ginkel because kind of no one is. Joker says, convinced Grenard just wanted out because they were the fools who let Sam Darnold go. I think he wanted out because he wanted 50 more million guaranteed and they didn't want to give it to him. I think that's probably it. Norris Force more likely to be a Viking in 2027, Addison or Jawan Jennings? Well, Addison would be the clear answer there. I think what Jawan Jennings' hope is that he plays really well as a Viking and then gets a chance somewhere else. That would be my guess. 2027 quarterback pie chart. No Vikings pie chart will top it this year. Yeah, 2027 quarterback pie chart is probably, we're going to start with 50% to Kyler Murray. And then it's probably 30% to a random veteran that we don't know yet. And, well, maybe 20% to a random veteran we don't know yet, 20% to a draft pick, and 10% to JJ McCarthy. That would be my initial run. Aaron, Cooper Rush for the practice squad, cut Brosmer. I think they're going to hang on to Brosmer for now, and if someone gets hurt, then they would go to Cooper Rush. Yeah, that'd be my guess. Let's see. Cinematic Opinion says, have we heard from Harrison Smith officially? No, not yet. And look, Harrison doesn't have to officially anything. Okay, Mike, you gotta calm down. Darnold wasn't really good last year. Stop. I mean, what are we doing here? Have you had too much fun on Memorial? Maybe that's the issue. Maybe you've had too much of a day off. Darnold wasn't that good last year. Okay. Oh, we passed 9 o'clock though. That's, you guys know the rules. If we get past 9 o'clock, anything goes. So saying Darnold wasn't good last year is that's an after 9 o'clock comment, man. But back to Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith doesn't have to come out and say, guys, I'm retiring, throw me a big party. He could just sort of wait and see. or he could not say anything. And then it just becomes obvious that he's not playing again. Like, I don't know. Like there's not like some rule that you have to announce that you're retiring. He could wait and see how things play out with the safety position. Hey, if the young guys are playing great and whatever, then just let it go and move on. Or if somebody gets hurt or they're struggling and they need him, then call him up week 8 and bring him in and try to rally the troops. Like, I don't know. I don't know what Harrison Smith wants to do, and he doesn't have to tell me or anybody else. So I wish that he would, if you guys remember tweeting out the Prince meme, I wish he would tweet out the Prince meme and let us know. But until then, there's a safety battle that we're going to cover, right? Rage 17th best quarterback in the league is not reasonable for Sam Darnold. It's just not. I don't know what to tell you. When a guy, what does he have to do to prove to you people? I don't understand. The people who like hang on to Sam Darnold's not that good. I don't get it. If any of these quarterbacks who had a different first impression were this good, do you know how many quarterbacks through history have a route like Sam Darnold that they become great, like in their mid-20s or late 20s? A dozen of them. It's happened many times throughout history. That was my argument for keeping him, if you remember. But the guy can't get a lick of credit. It was KOC. It was Jefferson. It was Clint Kubiak. It was Ken Walker. It was somebody. It's always somebody except Darnold, except for he has a top 10 everything over the last 2 years and has a Super Bowl ring and a 14-win season. And I don't know. I realize that teams win games, but if you're going to show me that NFC Championship game where he outplays Matthew Stafford and tell me that that's not a top 15 quarterback, I have no idea what you're smoking. I don't know what keep telling me that all these other quarterbacks are better than him, and he keeps just being awesome. So maybe, you know what, because Super Bowl teams regress, he probably will regress. And then I guess you could say, well, yeah, old Purple Insider, he should just tattoo Darnold to his face. But like, what if Justin Herbert did this? The same stuff, same stats and everything, people would talk about him as an all-time great quarterback. I guarantee you, if he did the same stuff. People love Justin Herbert so much. And look, I think he's good, but Darnold does this over these last 2 years. It's like, I don't know, whatever. He's not that good. I mean, is Justin Herbert like one of the most overrated quarterbacks? I mean, yes, I think like, in this way, Justin Herbert is a very good quarterback, but he is treated like he is flawless, as if he just is this unbelievable, untouchable super god quarterback who it's always everyone else's fault that he has some flaws. I think he will one day go deep in the playoffs. I think one day if he got the right team, he could win the Super Bowl. You'd love to have him as your franchise quarterback. I'm not down on him, but it's amazing how Sam Darnold can do this and then prove everybody wrong again by coming back and doing it with another franchise and play so freaking well. And another guy, number 1 wide receiver, is setting the world on fire with him. It's another offense. It's another offensive coordinator. He shows everybody that he can win all of the biggest games. And it's like, nah, I don't know, man. I think you're just salty at that point. Which rookie am I most interested in watching at OTAs, minicamp? It's a good question. Because I won't see a lot of Dominique Orange. I think it's Demings. I think it's Charles Demings. Yeah. Because I'll get to see a lot of him actually play. And maybe just undrafted wide receivers, Dylan Bell. I'll throw Dylan Bell in there as somebody who I'm very interested in seeing from Georgia, undrafted free agent. It's really wide receivers that you get the best look at. Like, I'm not going to get a great look at what Max Bredeson's going to do or even Damon Claiborne. Lone Wolf, do we need Bobby Wagner? Only if someone were to get hurt. And that does happen at times with this group. Isaac says, smart win is an even rotation to clog it up. Remember the Eagles wore teams down in the middle. Oh yeah. You're talking about the defensive tackles. Yeah. I agree with that. The rotation is absolutely what you want. Rotation is key. Yep. Kyler's always been a guilty pleasure quarterback for me, so I watched a lot of his 2024 season. Good year for him, pretty comparable to Darnold's first year. Yeah, or Darnold that year. So I agree, yeah. And if you watch 2024, then you'll also see all the, like they had 3 or 4 games that they should have won with just a little bit better coaching or one more stop on defense. Should have been a playoff team. And when you look at that offense, it's really not that impressive for the people around Kyler Murray. His 2024 was legitimately very good. Bitter Bruce loved the Frank Smith hiring. Can you explain what outside zone running blocking is and how it differs from the last couple years? So I think what you're looking for with outside zone is, and they do this differently in different places, but all the offensive linemen are going to move together in unison one way or the other. So they're all going to, if it's outside zone left, they're all going to be blocking left. And what you're looking to do is to create these reach blocks and these gaps. So if you have, just for example, like a really great center running outside zone, this is why they drafted Garrett Bradbury, and you're all going left. What you're hoping is that he can reach the other outside shoulder of a defensive tackle and get them turned, and then that the guard can take his guy and keep pushing him left. So you create a gap. And what the running back, why it's great for running backs, and this is why, they used to work for Denver, is so you have the running back, let's say picture them going left, and your center has turned his guy and your guard has eliminated his guy from the picture. He can break back up into that gap and take off. But if it doesn't really happen, he can keep going to the sideline. And how many times did you see Dalvin Cook hit the edge, right? So if you have Darisaw and he has removed someone from the edge, you're running behind him, you could just keep going. Or if you have like a fullback or somebody like that, and you could do that to either side. So you have a choice of a cutback and hit a gap or keep going to the edge. And the outside zone for the Vikings, they've kind of called it mid zone, which is a little more, instead of between, at least my understanding, instead of between the guard and the center, it's a little more guard tackle. You're trying to hit for the cutback. It's just a different version of the same thing. Where it could be different is, and this is me watching back because I was curious how they're going to use Max Bredesen. So I watched back a lot of tape from the Miami Dolphins and what they did. It's just window dressing. It's a lot of creativity and misdirection. So I'm mentioning this stuff where, you have everybody blocked to the left, but what they would do is they would line up this fullback like in a tight end spot and then shift him somewhere. Or they would have a fullback and he's going to block right, but they're going to run outside zone left. So what you do is you freeze a linebacker. So a linebacker's key is like watch the fullback. So then the fullback goes right. So he has to like start going right. And then everyone else goes left. And even that moment of hesitation, that could create a gap for a Devon Achane, or even a Jordan Mason or a Damon Claiborne or Aaron Jones. There's just a lot of this like clever little, so, and they don't run it all the time, like every single play, but there was one outside zone play where the fullback goes right, the fullback goes left and the quarterback fakes a handoff to him and then turns around and pitches it to the running back going right behind the offensive line. It's just it's a lot of these very traditional type runs, but with a little like, okay, I don't know. There's wide receivers, and this is where Juwan Jennings comes in. There's wide receivers lining up at tight end. You're like, what's he doing there? Is this going to be a play action where he goes deep out of a tight end position, or is he blocking? Or are they running is Tyreek Hill going to be the guy they block with? Maybe he goes back under the formation. Like there's just a lot of creativity there. Thanks, Ryder Mike, for tuning in. Appreciate that. The truth, you watched Kyler's 2024. The game he had against the Rams was a perfect passer rating. Oh yeah. The game against the Rams, if you just want to like snort some Vikings purple, excitement, just watch 2024 against the Rams and the Miami game. Also watch the Miami game. He was really good in that game. Those two games, there are games where it's tough, and especially against Seattle. You saw how good Seattle's defense was this year, but it was also good in 2024. Those games were a struggle for him. And that is a little bit of a trend with Murray. But is that him, or is it that their team was just not as good and you're asking him to drag him to the finish line, or the team to the finish line? Like, as we were talking about with that record with and without Kyler Murray, they were just not as good of a team as a lot of the teams they're going up against. So they're often during his career asking him to drag them across the finish line. That's what I mean. Jim says, still blows my mind in today's football. Still disrespect for kickers and punters. Well, not for Will Reichard, man. Everybody likes him. It always comes down to, is the guy good or not? Everybody loves Will Reichard because he's good. Rach, when Kyler is on, he looks like the best quarterback in the league. That's not an exaggeration. If it doesn't happen every week, though, that's the catch. Totally. When he's on, it is breathtaking. What you're trying to do is even out the roller coaster. That's the main goal. Son of Beavers, what are the odds of bringing a veteran tight end for a tight end 3? I don't think they're very high because Bredesen could play tight end. And also you have Gavin Bartholomew, who I'm kind of interested in. They drafted him last year and he got hurt in rookie minicamp. So I'm interested in that. The truth, when people say non-first round quarterbacks rarely work out, I wonder how much of that is due to lack of opportunities. Team give their first round quarterbacks a chance to fail in 3 to 5 versus 3 to 5 starts if lucky. It probably is a little bit of category A and a little bit of category B because, well, I think it's actually probably much more that they're not good enough, because think about it this way. Everyone wants desperately quarterbacks. Every given draft, there's 10 teams you could make an argument for they should draft quarterback. So the world is looking super close at every single detail, and they will overdraft the heck out of those guys. So a mid first round quarterback is more like a second round quarterback, and a second round quarterback is more like a fourth round quarterback, if that makes any sense. Or like if the quarterback had the same talent level as a wide receiver, they would be in the fourth round instead of the second, right? So if you've gotten all the way to the middle of the second round and everybody's passed on you twice, there's a reason. We see some of these guys work out, second rounders occasionally, but like take Will Levis, for example, as someone who clearly the NFL saw stuff they didn't like in Will Levis and passed and passed and passed and passed. And we find out after he actually plays that there's a reason for that. So yes, I'm sure that some of it is that they don't get opportunities, but I also think if you're worth anything at that position, I mean, Ty Simpson, man, barely played in college football, had half a good season. A team took him in 13th. So the desperate Kenny Pickett, my gosh, there was nothing really there. And somebody still, took him very high. Joe says Kyler has more upside than any other option the Vikings have or could through a trade outside of Burrow. Yes. Yep. Yep. That is true. Hunter says just watching some 2024 highlights of Darnold, stark contrasted quarterback play. This is the thing about Darnold. Like the people, I have always thought, you talk about stark difference. I've always thought there's a stark difference of football in our imaginations and football that actually happens. The football that's actually happened has been Sam Darnold for 2 seasons being an elite quarterback. Not the best quarterback in the whole league, not flawless for sure, but is he in the conversation over a 2-year period? Not even take out the wins and losses, just based on his performance. He's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league, easily, hands down. But in people's minds, they're like, no, he game managed. But in the Super Bowl, he did, but not in the NFC Championship game. Not to get there, he didn't. And there were some downs in a season, as Sam Darnold's going to have, because he's not a perfect quarterback. But there's this game of imagination that goes on. I brought it up the other day where it was like every year in May, someone would say Kirk was going to win the MVP. And you're like, that's not going to happen. With all respect to his good numbers and everything else, he was not going to win the MVP. And yet it was like, well, you could kind of see it. And every year this happens. I actually think last year there were like the Giants. If I remember last year, there was a run. People should go see if they can find it somewhere, like on the internet. There was a run of like a week where a bunch of analysts, for whatever reason, talked about how they could see the Giants being really good. It was like, what? Okay, man, I guess. I don't know. You could talk yourself into any team, any player, whatever. But then when it really happens, you go, oh, yeah, that's right. Their coach had no idea what he's doing. Kerpluppy, the way KOC was talking about Cooper Rush, that sounded like a guy expecting to open a QB3 spot. I was thinking more when he was talking about Cooper Rush that it was like, if Carson Wentz's shoulder falls off again, you're our first call. That was the way I took it. Nord, do you see a possibility we re-sign Jennings and trade Addison? I would be very surprised. I mean, Jennings is a really good player, but he's also like pushing 30. I think he wants a lot of money. He does have his limitations. He's a wide receiver 3. It would have to be such a better fit. I'd be pretty surprised if that happened. Lone Wolf, believe McCarthy wasn't a KOC guy. I can't play that game because we have no idea who was who, but I do know that if you look at the way after they drafted him, after his first training camp, the KOC talked about JJ McCarthy, you can never tell. How about even at the end of camp last year? You can never tell me he wasn't bought in. You can never tell me he wasn't bought in because there is no way they move on from Sam Darnold if he's not bought into JJ McCarthy. I just can't buy that. Hines, KOC's a top coach, but he needs to improve short yardage, ranks 32nd in the league for those situations. I know it's awful. It's atrocious. That's why you hire Frank Smith, I think, in part. I totally agree. It's the biggest thing that KOC said all of last year was that he started to understand in managing a game that sometimes you have to win the game in front of you and not the way you want to win it. The Max Brosmer game. The same goes for third and short. What you want to do as a coach is hit a 40-yard gain. Of course you do. I mean, who wouldn't love? I was watching a game. You guys appreciate this. Last night from 2000, Vikings Bucks. And in that game, Mike Alstott throws a pass. And if he had been able to connect with the tight end on 4th and 1, it's a touchdown walking in. But why the heck would you have Mike Alstott with the big neck roll throw a pass? What are you thinking? I mean, that doesn't have great odds of succeeding, even if you've done it in practice. The guy has a neck roll on. He can't throw the football. He's throwing it like that. It's kind of with like the same thing where if you could just dial it up perfectly, you'd hit a 30-yard pass every time on 4th and 1 and totally trick the other team. But realistically, in order to win the game, you're going to have to possess the football. And if you're ahead, especially, just get the first down and move on. And there's been a lot of times where that just didn't happen. Is Manny the same here as on Jazz 88? Yes, he is. That is the same Manny Hill. That is his radio work these days. Yeah. Get Manny back on soon enough. That is Mr. Manny. It's unmistakable, Manny's voice. Made for NFL films. Bob, Hitman's coming back. He wants the 40th INT. Could see that. Jay, what player on the offense of the biggest impact since we brought in Kyler? I mean, impact in terms of being different is probably Juwan Jennings. I mean, the player on offense who should have the biggest impact is Justin Jefferson. Rach saying Darnold is a good, not great quarterback is not a knock on him. I just don't understand where he hasn't been great over the last 2 years. If you just did blind resume and you put up what Sam Darnold did against any of the other quarterbacks that people endlessly fawn over, it's just as good over the last 2 seasons. It's just that everyone's first impression of Darnold was that he was terrible. And also everyone believed that KOC did it or Jefferson did it. Or when he went to Seattle, no one picked them to win anything. Seattle. No one picked Darnold to be a good quarterback. So everyone being so wrong, it certainly carries its own bias when everyone has been so incredibly wrong about this guy for such a long time. And when he has his upset, here's the difference with Darnold from all these other quarterbacks is when Darnold has a bad game, it's like, oh my God, he's seeing ghosts. He sucks. But when Herbert has a bad game, it's like, did you see how bad his left guard was? He's amazing, okay? He was a top draft pick who was great right away. That's the difference. It's impressions. It's not facts because every quarterback has these ups and downs. Every quarterback has the Jaguars game that Sam Darnold played, but when he has it, it's like he's seeing ghosts, get him out of there. It is truly like a test, I think, of how we perceive things and what our first impressions are and how hard they are to, take those away. That seeing ghost thing has just stuck with him forever. Now it should be gone by now, but people are still going to rank him 17th in the league. People are still going to put him behind mediocre quarterbacks because they still think that he's just, gotten lucky. What's crazy to me is he was a top draft pick. Case Keenum, you could say, lucked into it, but not him. Bitter Bruce with a very old school reference. Kyler Murray with Arizona reminds me of Archie Manning with the Saints. Yeah. Archie Manning was always considered to be a pretty good quarterback. Yes, you're right, Joker. Sean King with the Hail Mary. Yep. Sapp blocks the field goal. Great memory. Great memory, Joker. That's the game. It was a great football game. Sadly, I had to listen to Dennis Miller for 3 hours to watch the game, though. Anyway. Ryder says, strangest thing I noticed with McCarthy was the difference between throwing the ball at the receivers versus throwing it to where they could get the ball. Right. That's anticipation. And in the NFL, you got to have it. And I think you can learn it, but it takes time. Jay, what game do you have circled on the schedule that you're most excited about? I mean, there's two of them that just stand way out. Week 1 versus Green Bay and Buffalo Monday Night Football. Is that week 9? Easily. Those two tower over the rest, unless Chicago's really interesting at the end. Abnormal, I think KOC's the guy, but if we go into the playoffs again and lose in a Braden Powell tush-push way, the seat can't at least be warm. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, this year, every year is completely different for how we feel about everyone. And when people say like it's a week to week, it's a year to year league. I mean, coach of the year, and you're talking about, like how great he was and everything else. And then 2 weeks later, they lose and it's KOC can't coach and Darnold's a bad quarterback. Like, this is football. So what I try to do is like, where is the right place to be with this reaction stuff? And I do agree with you that if they went to the playoffs and had another disappointing game where they're favored and don't really show up or kind of fumble the ball in against the Giants like they did at home, you're going to start asking that question. I would also point out that, someone like Denny Green didn't win a playoff game for a long time and then got to the NFC Championship and needed his kicker to make a kick. 72 MRJ, what rookie do you expect to make the most immediate impact? I would actually go Dominique Orange on this because Orange is an NFL ready prospect, unlike Caleb Banks, who's going to need some work, and Orange is healthy, so he gets a full off season. I think he's going to play a ton. And the other one is probably Max Bredesen, as weird as that might sound. And Jacoby Thomas, the door is open. He could possibly be an impact player if he can beat out one of those other guys. But Orange is like, he is in. Like, you're playing nose tackle, my friend. So he'd be my pick. Jay, what change does KOC need to make to give us 1 or 2 more wins? I think it's exactly what we're talking about. I mean, I think it's just when you have, and they've won a lot of close games, but a lot of it is sort of self-inflicted or self-created close games. When you have an opportunity to just hunker down and win the game in the simplest way possible, just do that. And I don't mean every time you're up 10 points, just, hey, we're not going to throw ever again. Like, dagger is great when you can just, if you could just finish somebody off with a great throw or something, like, great, that's awesome. When you could throw, and he, pointed this out last year that they did that with, was it a Darnold game or a Kirk game or something where they ran a play action and threw and won the game. It's like, okay, great. But at some point you need to convert those 3rd and shorts. At some point you need to just say, look, we could just run here. And at the end of the season, they started doing it because they had to. Imagine Herbert throwing to Justin Jefferson. I mean, I'm not trying to be down on Justin Herbert. He's had a lot of good players and he's had good coaches. I wouldn't say Brandon Staley was a good coach, but I think that their offenses were fine. They went to the playoffs. They blew a humongous lead because he kind of no-showed in the second half of the game. And they've drafted receivers for him. They've signed receivers for him. They've had bad offensive lines. They haven't had the best running game. I think he's a really good quarterback. It's just that results wise, it has not been what it looked like it was going to be initially. And the physical tools that he has are tremendous, but there's always something missing. And that game against the Patriots in the playoffs, it's like, okay, I get it. Like, your offensive line's getting beaten, but he was not under pressure as much as we've seen previously. And it was just kind of a no-show. I don't know. Like, that's why I've called him Justin Kirkbert for his entire career, and I haven't been proven wrong yet. It's a lot of stats, and it's a lot of praise for him specifically, more than Kirk probably, but it's a lot of stats and it's a really good quarterback, but I don't know if there's a next gear to him that everyone sees. Maybe if everything comes together, but there's a lot of disappointment there. It's just from a results perspective, one player has had much, much, much better results, and his treat is like he's not anywhere close. That's my point. If you said that Darnold and Herbert were very close quarterbacks, I could say, yeah, okay, I buy that. I'm saying that Darnold is closer to Herbert. Not that Herbert is terrible. That's not the point. Anyway, Flynn is KOC capable of changing his system to reflect his current players? Feels Childress like, I don't know. I mean, Childress was kind of a little famous for that, but I think he changed it a lot from 2023 to 2024 with Sam Darnold. I do think that he changed quite a bit there, like the downfield stuff with Kirk, or maybe maybe it was just the interpretation of the quarterback. Like, Kirk wanted to get it to TJ Hawkinson quicker and get completions, whereas Sam Darnold wanted to rip it 40 yards downfield. So maybe it was the interpretation. Run game for sure and that's why hiring Frank Smith and hiring Keith Carter to be the offensive line coach, that's where it tells me he is looking in the mirror and being serious about it, at very least. I don't think there's as much adjustment with Kyler Murray as it would seem like, because a lot of this is built to get the tight end open underneath, and I think he's going to use that a lot. Abnormal, where do you think the team stands with Walter Rouse? Seems like a great guy, but seems weird to feature him so much on socials, and seems like the coaching staff is keen on him. So I think that with Walter Rouse, if they move him to guard, that maybe he's got a chance there. He is fairly athletic, and they clearly like their big giant guards. I think he's probably fit for that. I think they tried that a little last year and then realized that they needed him to play tackle, but I'd like to see him get a shot to be a backup guard. There's also it's a late round draft pick, and you take a lot of swings at tackle. I mean, I know Walter enough from the last couple of years. He really is like a great person in the locker room. He is much smarter than all of us. If you look up his background and what he went to college for and all that stuff, I mean, he is a super intelligent guy. So you like to have him in your locker room and on your team. Is there a tackle there? Like this, it seems kind of Brandel. Actually, it seems very similar to Brandel, where Brandel started out a tackle. It was probably just a little too much for him athletically, but he was a great dude and they loved his attitude and they loved his intelligence. So they moved him inside. I think that might happen with Rouse. We'll see. Saying drafting McCarthy was one of the biggest gaffes in NFL history is hyperbole, don't you think? I think you misunderstood. Getting rid of Sam Darnold is one of the biggest gaffes in history. And going to JJ McCarthy. There's no arguing that. You had a quarterback win 14 games for you. Let him go. No one's ever done it, by the way. No one has ever in history had a quarterback perform like that. Kevin Seifert did a thing on this. No one has ever done it. Had a quarterback perform like that and then moved on. And then the guy immediately wins the Super Bowl while you're sitting at home watching because your quarterback was 42nd out of 45 that you chose over him. Yeah, that's one of the biggest gaffes in NFL history. Yeah. Yep. That's just a fact, man. So, Jim, wow. Thank you for the huge super chat, right? Coming in right at the end. I was just about to say goodbye, Jim. And you come up with that, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I mean, I said to my wife earlier, I'm like, I don't know if anyone's going to tune in. I'll just maybe chat for an hour or something. And here we are, 3 hours. because you guys have consistently had great commentary and great thoughts, great conversation, moving the conversation around. I've loved it. This has been a really fun night. So tomorrow, I'm not really sure I'm definitely not going to go live tomorrow because the next day is OTAs. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. So this might be it for today, but OTAs for sure. Wednesday, we'll be out there. And right after, we're going to record a podcast myself, Dane Mizutani, the Pioneer Press. I will bring that to you Wednesday and Wednesday night, answer your questions about OTAs as well. So, right? Trying to give you everything I can from a spring practice, but I know that there's a lot to learn and a lot to take away. So everything I can give you, I will. And to your question, Jim, about Maggie. So she is, she's doing career stuff and she's got another internship on the way that is not related to football, and she's going to chase that. She did an amazing job last year with, the Robinson Roundup and everything else. But she is just on a great trajectory for her career. I'm super happy for her, but sadly we're not going to have the Robinson Roundup probably this year because she's going to be a real member of the media at some point soon. So I'm very happy for her, but she is always welcome, just like Paul Hodowanik, and Clay as well, intern Clay. So that all the interns are welcome back anytime they want. Thank you, Nord. I really appreciate that. So thanks so much, everybody. This was a really enjoyable show, and I will definitely be talking to you on Wednesday night. We'll see. I've been trying to hunt down an interview for tomorrow, but it's also Memorial Day week and stuff. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Hope you had a good weekend, and we'll see you soon.